We're calling this Board of Education meeting for Sacramento Unified School District to order. Can we call roll?
Member Villa?
Here.
Member Rhodes?
Present.
Member Phillips? Member Wu?
Thank you very much. Do we have any public comments for closed session items? Okay, thank you very much. We'll adjourn into closed session. We are calling the Sacramento Board of Education meeting to order. Superintendent. Right. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we will all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand.
And
Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item 4.2, broadcast statement. Student member, would you like to read the broadcast statement?
No, I can do it.
Okay.
This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being recorded in its entirety. It will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast, Consolidated Communication, and AT&T Uverse. Today's meeting will be aired Monday, September 19th, at noon, and Tuesday, September 20th at 9. It is also webcast at metro14live.saccounty.net and can be reviewed on Metro Cable 14 YouTube channel. We welcome members of the audience to address the board. Please complete a speaker form located in the back of the community room and give them to our communication representatives, along with any handouts you may have for the board prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Please limit comments during public comment to items that are not on the agenda. If you do have a comment on the item that is on the agenda, we will ask that you please defer your comments until the item comes up on the agenda. Please turn off your cell phones or place them on silent or vibrate.
Pronounce your name. Tierney Harris and Maura Perez Lima. Yeah. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Right there's fine. Yeah. I did? Miss
Tierney.
Tierney. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, so youth development support services selected both of these students for their hard work and dedication to the YDSS High School Ambassador Program. These students took full advantage of the opportunities that the program provided by impacting their communities with their assistance in expanding learning programming. They provided cross-age mentoring to their elementary feeder schools through facilitation of enrichment activities that include health and wellness, SEL, and STEM. Each of these individuals were integral in the completion of the Summer Matters Ambassador Media Project. Maura and Tierney, I hope I said that right. Okay. Have also taken advantage of other work experience opportunities that were presented to them through the course of the program. And are continuing the YDSS High School Ambassador Program for their senior year. These two students have epitomized service learning through their work and awareness towards the civic duties and have a bright future in exploring opportunities that truly make a difference. Let's give them a warm round of applause. And before the board comes down to take a picture with you guys, would you guys like to say anything? Would you guys like to say anything at all? Okay.
So I would just like to say thank you to my parents, to my boss, David, for always being very supportive. And I have learned so much through this program. Being able to connect with the kids, I think, is one of the most important things because we are the youth. And I think that it is important for us to know how important our voice is and that it does matter. And I have, through this program, it has helped me so much. As you guys mentioned, I've participated in a women's panel, and through that, I've learned so much and really grown as a person. So I would really like to say I'm so honored to be here, and thank you.
If there's, did you have something you want to say as well?
I'm not really good with speeches, but I'm just going to say thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to my boss, Ms. Cece, and Mr. Chong. And I really enjoy working with the youth because I work at my sister's elementary school, and I love working with them. They're very sweet kids.
Let's take a quick pic, and then we'll handle the rest of the business. But we want to definitely take a picture with you guys really quickly.
Get your teaching credential and then come back and.
Hold on, gotta give them something.
Very brave, too.
For you. This is for you. Perfection. ¿Y la cuándo? 1, 2. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Good evening, Standing President Rhodes this evening. There are 4 announcements coming out of closed session. First, the board approved a special education settlement agreement identified as OAH case number 2022-070410 by a vote of 5-0, with members Pritchett and Garcia absent. The remaining announcements will be made by the superintendent.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. I am very pleased to announce today 3 announcements. The first, by a vote of 5-0 with board members Pritchett and Garcia absent, the board approved the appointment of Dr. Carla Galbraith as principal at Bowling Green McCoy Elementary School. Congratulations, Dr. Galbraith. Also, by a vote of 5-0 with board members Pritchett and Garcia absent, the board approved the appointment of Ms. Vanessa Buitrago as instructional assistant superintendent for secondary. Congratulations, Ms. Buitrago. And finally, also by a vote of 5-0 with board members Pritchett and Garcia absent, the board approved the appointment of Mr. Enrique Flores as instructional assistant superintendent elementary. Congratulations, Mr. Flores.
Before we adopt the agenda, we want to make a slight agenda amendment. We would like to move items 9.7, 9.8, and 9.9, move them to be directly after 9.2. If the board so approves, we will make those adjustments. So moved? Aye. Okay, thank you. Those are noted. Next, agenda adoption. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda as well? Move. Second. All in favor? Okay. Now, do we have any public comment? Ann, do we have any public comment? Oh,
Yes, we have about 12 public comment.
okay. Seeing that there's 12.
So we have Terrence Gladney signed up to speak on 5.0, as he just mentioned, and also on 7. So we would have him recognized twice.
Okay. That's fine.
So let's go ahead and have Terrence Gladney, and then we'll have Lindsay Harbaugh. Excuse me? Okay. Terrence Gladney, followed by Lindsay Harbaugh, and then Noreen Meads.
And we 2 minutes for each speaker, please.
So
Go ahead,
I requested public comments on 5.0, 6.0, and 7.0. But I guess he was advised by legal counsel that I can't comment on 5.0, although I have in the past. So my comment on 5.0, I attended Cal in the mid-90s at the onset of Prop 209, which is the elimination of affirmative action. At that time, I don't remember the percentage of African-American students on campus, but in the 20-plus years since, I know that it has dwindled tremendously as a result of a policy. Whatever side of the policy you lay on as far as affirmative action, there's nothing put in its place to make sure that there is equitable attendance and enrollment at that school. When I look at our recently lost and hired principals, when I look at Rosa Parks and someone like Corey Jones, better known as CJ, a founding teacher of the parent-teacher home visit program, when I think about Tarek McFall, deeply involved in home visits, when I think of Gail Johnson, who retired, and Faye Sharp, and all these African-American leaders that were stalwarts at their campuses, when I see their names replaced at a school site with no knowledge of how or why they left, and I also see further deficiencies in African-American leadership in our district, I'm reminded that we're sort of following the same path as UC Berkeley and the UC system, because we don't have policies in place that are intentionally making sure our students are represented at our school sites. I know, because I have personal relationships with many of these leaders that have left, that there were not exit interviews done. So if we don't know why we're losing something, how do we know how we're going to replace it or ensure that we're going to be able to sustain leadership in the same capacity? So there's just some food for thought. In terms of 6.0, the agenda adoption, I want to start with a moment of silence for my friend Frank DeYoung, who lost his wife, Karen. And I visited Frank, I think it was last Friday. But Frank, like me, is just he's a grandparent, but he's a very vocal, passionate warrior. We don't always agree on everything, but we know that our goal is to give these children in this district what's best. But when you think of someone like Frank or like myself, you have to think of someone like Karen, because it's the people that we represent that are at home that we bring with us. It's our children, it's the people from our school sites. So, you know, when I sit at home and watch the meeting virtually, when I sit in the audience and see selective application of wrap it up or thank yous, I ask that as we go through this meeting, that you guys honor Karen and all of us who have lost someone or have people at home, and be just as willing to thank us for our time and them for their contribution and their sacrifice as you are for staff who are doing their job. Now, my 7.0 comment. I want you guys to imagine a classroom where there's a lot of adults, right? And they're very selective in how they honor people who they allow to speak, the framework in which they allow people to elevate their voices. But they're also very selective in how they punitively oppress people's voices. I don't think that you guys have to imagine that deeply because that is this boardroom. When I see people being hurried or eyebrows from the superintendent or people conveniently getting up to leave the dais when there's something that does not align with their belief, then that is a disservice to what this institution is supposed to be, which is about all of our voices. Yeah, and I mean, it's just disappointing. I know some of you outside of this space, but I know most of the parents that come up into this space and speak, and I just ask that we're just a little bit more even-handed with our thank yous and our wrap-it-ups, and we actually listen to one another. Like, if there are check boxes that exist on forms and requirements statutorily for this district to proceed, they're not there by accident. When you guys write statements like, you know that this system isn't equitable by design and you want to interrupt it, I think of interrupting as I'm still going to continue as I was with maybe a pause. I would hope that we rewrite that vision statement and the pillars that we stand on to not interrupt the inequities or interrupt the system, but actually wrap it up and start something new, because that's where we should be going. Thank you.
So next we have 4 speakers who have donated their time to Jean Shanley, who has time herself, so a total of 10 minutes for Jean Shanley.
Good evening. Just waiting for my time to come up. Okay, all right. It only says in less than 2 minutes, but that's okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and thank you to the parents who donated time to me. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about the COVID policies. It's not on the agenda, which is good because it means we've made some progress when you think about, where we were a year ago to where we are now. Things are much better. We don't have the mandate anymore. You guys set that aside. And now CDPH has said people don't need to test regularly. So all of these things are really, really good. The mask mandate is down. But I did notice that you are doing a COVID vaccine, COVID injection clinic for one of the elementary schools. I believe it's a K through 6 school at an event coming up. And what concerns me about these clinics is when they attach monetary value to people getting experimental medical treatments. We saw this really early on in the pandemic, and it was very concerning then from an ethical standpoint that you're paying people to get medical care. I'm concerned that it incentivizes people. I believe the payment is $50. $50 for some communities and some families is a lot. That you can buy a number of things. People are living on tight budgets. And so I'm concerned that we're incentivizing people to place their children's health at risk for a $50 payment. It's very concerning to me. Denmark just recently banned the COVID injections for healthy children under 18. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. And shortly after that, Britain announced that they've banned the COVID injections for 12 and unders, healthy 12 and unders. So the UK already wasn't recommending them for 18 and under, and now they've completely banned them for 12 and under. The FDA hasn't approved them. They're still EUA for adults and kids because Comirnaty, again, isn't available. So I assume what you're using at the, I think I saw the Moderna vaccine is being delivered at this event. So it's not it's an EUA vaccine. It's not an FDA-approved vaccine. California's legislative vaccine work group has not been able to push through the mandates. So these are all the things that have been developing over the year. So initially in the pandemic, it was shocking that people were getting paid, free college education to get vaccinated. Why would you have to pay people to get a medical treatment that benefits them? But now at this point in time, I mean, it just looks like bribery, and it looks like we're targeting communities. And again, I'm worried about the equity issues. We shouldn't be paying people to get experimental treatments. And we can't really argue anymore that this is the right direction to go in, because when we have two prominent Western countries that completely banned them, I mean, you can't take the position that it's a no-brainer that everybody needs to get these injections. And there's also research that's come out that the more you get injections and boosters and whatnot, the more boosters you've had, the more risk you are at of getting reinfected with COVID. There's a major study that came out on that recently. I can send that to you via email if you don't have it. So we can't argue that it's clearly for their benefit, and it's just misinformation and ignorance on the part of the public. You can't really argue that. So I'm not understanding the $50 payment at all. It's really concerning. The next thing I wanted to ask you to do is so I'm asking you to stop offering those kind of payments to people. The next thing I'd like you to do is to withdraw the COVID injection mandate resolution. You passed a resolution, I think, like last October, telling everybody in school, the kids all had to get vaccinated, or 12 and up. And if they didn't, they had to test. And now the testing has been canceled by CDPH. So there's no piece of that that's relevant anymore. Maybe it's on your list of things to do, I don't know, but I'm asking you to go ahead and withdraw that. I don't know if maybe there's a thinking that you should keep that resolution in place, and maybe you'll just have an opportunity to reactivate it later. But I think that that's a big if. I mean, it took 5 years for the FDA to withdraw Vioxx from the market. So these things take time. So the fact that children have been able to get vaccines for 12 to 15 months is by no means a slam dunk that these vaccines are going to be around at all, let alone mandated. So I think the best thing to do, so as not to confuse the public, is to withdraw that resolution so that people don't think that that's somehow still in effect. That would be the clearest thing. I think there was a promotional video that staff had done. I think it was the public relations person, as well as Victoria Flores, the COVID safety person. And I mean, I don't think that fixes the issue. I think the resolution should be withdrawn because it's inapplicable. And the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is about the use of guardians. How many minutes is that? Okay, thank you. Yeah, because you didn't advise me either how much time I had. So this last point won't take very long. So recently, there's been a shift. Like when we get our email messages or voicemail messages, they're electronically generated, I think, computer generated, and they refer to us as guardian. And I've noticed it in emails too. You've dropped the parents. You're referring to everybody as guardians. I'm not sure where that decision was made and why that was made, and you may not even be aware of it. I don't know. I think there's been an attempt to kind of society-wide to neutralize language in a lot of different settings, and so maybe that's what the thinking was with this. But parents and guardians are different status, and I think parents should be given their status by referring to them as parents. Parents are not guardians. Guardianship is a specific legal procedure you go through with a court, and the court grants you permission to have rights with respect to a child. That's not what parents are. Parents have natural born rights with respect to their children, and you'd have to go to court to get those withdrawn. I don't have to go to court, you would have to go to court. So, and with regard to the use of the term parent, even in FERPA, that term is defined to include guardians. So what would be an appropriate term to use is just refer to everybody as parents, because under FERPA, that includes guardians. So I'm not sure why we're whitewashing this and reducing parents. Some people, I think, are concerned that this is reducing the status of parents, that you're just a guardian and you have permission to make decisions with regard to your child, and that's not the case. It's legally inappropriate. It's legally wrong. It's under the law. So I would ask you to change that and refer to parents as parents. And that's it. I'm not going to use the rest of my time. I yield it back to the board. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any other public
We have
comments?
one more. Harpreet Chauhan.
Ms. Johan? How are you today?
Hello. As my family approaches, we are the Carters, and we are proud parents of 2 children from Aspire Capitol Heights Academy. And we just wanted to take a little bit of your time to invite you guys out to our ribbon cutting ceremony that's going to be happening. I have some save the dates here. I guess I can give them to you guys. That's just for our new school that we have that we're really excited about. I'll take just a few minutes to tell you why I'm so passionate about Capitol Heights Academy. My husband and I, we have our oldest son, he's in the 7th grade, and he's on an IEP plan and special education, but the teachers and the support there has just been amazing. We've bounced from school to school, obviously trying to find the right programs, and CHA, which is Capitol Heights Academy, has just really wrapped their arms around him. We needed someone who had a heart for him. So on those tough days, you could really see who he was, and building trust with him and the staff, Ms. Chauhan, all of the staff, the admin teachers have just done an amazing job. And then also with our little one here who has been exceptional and has excelled. The school just represents community, trust, authenticity, and they just really show up ready every day. And as a parent who some might say is a helicopter parent, if you guys, on TikTok and stuff. But anyhow, it's just really important to me, but it's all inclusive, and that means a lot to us. And, we're raising children in a world that doesn't necessarily exist anymore from us in our standpoint. And so we have morals and integrity, and CHILD represents all of that. So we would love to have you guys come out and be a part of that if you're available, and I'll leave these with you guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And if you can give those right over there, and then
Awesome.
we can get to that first. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We have one more member Rhodes. Hassan McWhorter.
Brother Hassan,
How you doing, brother?
how are you doing?
How you doing, Jorge? Good. How you all doing? Awesome. All right. So most of you already know who I am. My name is Hassan McWhorter. I'm the 2nd Vice President with the Sacramento City Teachers Association. I'm here to say thank you for getting us that updated salary schedule that we requested. Appreciate that. And you also got us that vacancy list. I really appreciate you. We have some things outstanding. First of which is school started, and we have a shortage of teachers. According to your vacancy list, we have approximately 162 vacancies. Now, we understand nationwide that there's vacancies, right? But when we look at our district has 162, San Juan has 20, and Elk Grove has 35. We have 150 more. And as a teacher at Capital City now, I'm seeing an atrocity. And it's usually Black and brown kids who suffer, not white, middle-class folks like our children. So it's us. My children don't have to worry, and your children don't either. It's the poor kids that have to struggle without a good teacher. So TK, problem, huge problem. And if that is where our kids start, they need quality teachers, and they need all of us to get together and solve the problem. And let's see, the last thing I want to say is the district labor relations team, headed by an outside consultant and attorneys, right? They still haven't implemented the programs and the things that we talked about after the strike. And lastly, I want to take a quote from Lillian Katz. She was a famed child psychologist. Here's what she said. Each of us must come to care about everyone else's children. We must recognize that the welfare of our children and grandchildren is intimately linked to the welfare of all other people's children. After all, when one of our children needs a life-saving surgery, someone else's child will perform it. Thank you.
Brother Hassan, really quick question for you. Are you going to stay for the SCTA report update as well?
1052.
So this was the report.
That was it.
Okay, thank you, my brother.
But I'll send you a video, okay? All right. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Do we have any more public comments? Okay. Thank you for all the public comment. We do appreciate you guys coming out tonight. We're going to go to special presentations, 8.1, opening of schools updates.
Acting President Rhodes, if I can just mention as our team gathers and comes to the podium, we of course do have a lot of information that we wanted to share with our board and with our community. And I'm just going to ask, the team has really prepared. They've done a dry run. We allocated 30 minutes. We know that last week we did not have a quorum to have an open session, so the team has continued to work and refine so that we can be within those 30 minutes and continue with the heavy agenda that we still have. But I just want to recognize the very cross-functional work that has had to take place because we've just been looking forward to bring this update to you as board members and to our community.
Okay. Superintendent just said 30 minutes. I see you have about 45 to 50 people with you. So let's see if you guys can actually do 30 minutes. But I'm looking forward to the report. So, Constance, on you.
Fantastic. There's not a clicker up here, so we will just speed right along. Thank you, board members, superintendent. We are here to share with you, a cross-functional team, the opening of schools update presented by a variety of cross-functional departments and a little bit about where we're going. We know that we have a number of things to continue to work on as we are not there. There is a lot of work to do. We wanted to share with you some of the things that have happened and that are taking place. So in the next slide, you see a list of some of the acronyms that you'll see throughout the evening. And we'll make sure to address those as they come. Following that slide, you will see an agenda. So you'll hear from the student support and health services, academic achievement, with some data specifically in there, also related to our professional learning update sessions that took place this summer, facilities, nutrition, safe schools, human resources enrollment center, and a communications update is how we'll end our time with you. So is it okay if I just keep going, or? Yeah, okay, thanks. So we wanted to share in our opening of schools a number of pictures from the year, starting off with staff as well as students being incredibly excited to be back on campuses, to be back with each other, to be back with their school communities. And we know that as we work to keep the main thing, we recognize that while there are significant things we need to continue to work on and continue to address, we try to keep these individuals, as you see here on these pictures, in mind as we work to improve. We know we have to, but at the same time, we wanted to share with you some of the hard work that is taking place. So we'll turn it over to Student Support Health Services team to take you through some of our updates in this area.
Thank you so much. So I know I was here in August with you all. Just want to ground us in our purpose and why, we're here to safely support in-person learning for all of those students and families making that choice, and really focusing on these layered mitigation measures to make sure that we provide that opportunity. We did learn this week that the state public health order for education workers is going to be ending on September 17th. That was an order that required education workers to either be vaccinated or undergo weekly COVID testing. And this is really just a shift in a pandemic strategy as vaccination rates are high, as is level of immunity, because unfortunately COVID is pretty widespread. We communicated with our community and we'll be circling back on that. Just also wanted to ground us in our face masking guidance. So Sacramento County is still in the medium zone, so that's great. We saw that we were in the high for quite some time this summer, now really holding true in the medium. And so when we are in that low or medium CDC community level, face masking is strongly recommended but not required. When we move to that really high, wide, spread, want to protect the ability to be able to go to school and have as many people attend, we'll put those face masks back on indoors. We'll move levels that following, so every Thursday the CDC updates that data, and that following Monday is when we would make any shift. Of course, a state or county public health order, would always supersede. Our focus on COVID testing is really about equity and access, making sure that everyone can get testing should they want it or need it. Our care rooms are staffed. We've got testing days out at our large secondary schools to support high-risk groups or populations. 3 regional testing centers available to all of our staff, students, and their household members, as well as over-the-counter test distribution. And you can see in September, we provided 95,000 over-the-counter test kits out to our community to support return to school as well as Labor Day weekend. Our mitigation measures, as we saw in that first slide, are layered. Our health aides are out there. We are doing vaccine clinics every Tuesday next door, room 4, from 4 to 6, open to anyone 5 and over. And we do have the bivalent vaccine, Pfizer. If you're looking for that, come on over next week. You can make an appointment now on my turn as well, which is great news. We're still sending out those exposure notices and updating our COVID dashboard so that families and staff can understand what COVID is looking like in their community, and you'll hear about filtration later on. Grounding us in some of the COVID recovery, we're also looking at school-required vaccines, right? We know that we got behind on these when we were all home. Our clinic has been open since early August. One of the biggest things they do is help our families who are newcomers in translating those records and getting them entered into our California Immunization Registry. We've served over 437 students and over 1,000 vaccines just this summer. Right now, currently, we have about 680 students who still need to submit their vaccine records in kinder, first, 7th, and 8th. Those are the grades that the state audits us on. This is actually, a little lower than last year, which is great. We're still not back to pre-pandemic levels, but we're really getting close. Just kudos to all of our site leaders and teams who are working with our families daily on that. As we pivot to, again, looking at COVID recovery and health services out in our school sites, I'm really excited to share with you, we have 33 school nurses serving out there. It's the most I've ever had the privilege to support. Health aides, lead nurses. We do still have vacancies, though. So here's my commercial. If you know anyone who's a registered nurse and is, maybe looking to serve their community in a unique public health setting, we are hiring. And our goal is to have 1 FTE school nurse and health aide at all of our large comprehensive high schools where we know we have really significant needs, and that will really lower caseloads across the board so we can focus on that COVID recovery to provide that prevention and early intervention support. Same on the student support services staffing side as we look from physical health to mental health. 32 school social workers serving out, again, the largest number I've ever had the privilege to serve, 21 mental health specialists, but as you can see, we are still hiring social workers as well. 7 vacancies, 4 for specialists and so on. We are enacting right now regional connect centers that are geographically located to provide that prevention and intervention services. Our goal is to be at all school sites that would have dedicated staffing. Currently, we're at 72% of our schools. Great news, we've got 4 hires pending, new hires pending, just waiting for a credential or waiting, for their start date. And once they come on board, we'll be up to about 89% of our school sites. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the academic office.
Good evening. Say good morning. Been here all day. Okay, so we're going to go very fast on the data piece because we know that you've seen this. We showed this on August 11th. So this is just a quick revisit of our 21-22 CAS data. It does show that in English language arts, 38% of our students were proficient. Obviously, that's far lower than the 80% that we're striving for at MTSS with the high quality instruction. When you look in our math data, again, it shows that we are well below that 80% proficiency mark, and without any of our groups also making that mark as well. But again, this is data you saw on August 11th. Very quickly, you did not see this on August 11th. And one thing we designed last year in partnership with our data partners, was a way for us to monitor the participation rates for interim district common assessments. And that's what we're doing this year. We started that last year. We're going to be doing that more in depth this year, and not looking at just overall, but also looking at students in different subgroups, special education, who also are chronically absent, and their access to assessments. We may come back later on and talk more about that, but this is just one of the tools that we developed to support our MTSS. And here's Erin.
Good evening, everyone. Superintendent asked me to share our August professional learning with you, and in order to do that, I just wanted to reorient you to our problem of practice that we shared on August 11th around our need to define and implement high quality instruction through a professional learning model. So this is here just for your reference. We also shared in August our theory of action that if we develop and implement a district-wide 3-year professional learning plan that defines high quality instruction and empowers site leaders to engage staff, then we will be able to provide and monitor that high quality tier 1 instruction. So these are just to orient you into how we approached our professional learning this August. In order to really work to define that high quality instruction and empower our site leaders and staff to be able to implement it, our central office professional learning team, so that's our CNI and multilingual directors and coordinators, our IASs, staff from special ed and student support and health services, leveraged the improvement science and the coherence models that we worked through this summer to design professional learning for our site and department leaders. So you'll see on this slide that we provided that throughout the month of August, and that we aimed during that time to both work to support them to improve their instructional leadership practices, while also preparing them to customize and facilitate the high quality instruction, professional learning and collaboration that they then facilitated on their sites August 29th through 31st. So this slide is designed to show you that through line, how we went from that big picture to our site department leaders and then to our certificated staff. When we first engaged our site leaders, our site and department leaders in that instructional professional learning, we focused on the high quality instructional leadership practices and that preparation for facilitation. We also brought our MTSS cohorts together to engage in professional learning. And then of course, we provided that really important operational professional learning in order to be able to keep our schools safe and safely open for our students and adults every day. So that's the content of what we provided to our site and department leaders. Upon the closure of each session, we asked for feedback from participants in 3 areas. So was this learning experience engaging? It supported my growth and it was relevant and meaningful. We asked them to rate each session on a scale of 1 being strongly agree or 5 being strongly agree that it was engaging, supported their growth, etc. 1 being strongly disagree. So you'll see here our data from our site and department leaders that we are generally speaking averaging between that 3 and 4 range on neutral to agree, and in some cases moving above that agree range for all of the professional learning we provided to our site and department leaders. In August, we then moved on to our certificated staff. A major element of the time with our site and department leaders was the design and preparation of professional learning modules that our academic office teams designed, then our site leaders customized and facilitated. So the intent was to really build coherence across our system around that high quality instruction. Specifically, the academic office created modules on building community through compassionate dialogue, understanding trauma, database decision making, designing learning intentions for all students, and serving our emergent bilingual students. Then site and department leaders customized those. Many of them expanded on that as well to address the local context and needs of their staff and learning communities. Our partners at EPIC and in our student support and health services and special ed teams also designed learning for either online engagement or recorded sessions for staff that were consistent across the system. The result is that both our site and department leaders and our certificated staff at every site and department have now engaged in professional learning on the same focus areas of high quality instruction, laying the groundwork for our next steps in that strategic plan. You'll see here, we also surveyed our certificated staff. This is based on 7,500 responses from the modules that the academic office designed and then that the site and department leaders facilitated and customized. So you'll see same rating scale here. This learning experience was engaging. It supported my growth, it was relevant and meaningful. And you'll see across those 5 modules that of those respondents, the average was that they agree that those modules were engaging, did support their growth, and were relevant and meaningful to their practice. A couple more pieces. None of this was possible or would have been as successful had it not been a collaborative effort. So I wanted to highlight a little bit of that. So through our work with site and department leader representatives and input from the SCTA equity team, we made some significant changes to our initial vision of that August professional learning. That included creating more flexibility for our facilitators, building in additional collaborative time, increasing the time spent on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and adding sessions on implicit bias and LGBTQ+ advocacy and policy. And also because of that collaboration, we were able to design supports for site leaders, such as optional collaboration sessions and one-to-one support for facilitation preparation. Oh, the slide went away. Thank you. We also provided job-specific schedules and sessions for staff in jobs outside of the classroom, and we provided on-demand technology support for certificated staff with our curriculum and instruction ed tech team. There's still a lot of data to be analyzed. In addition to those 3 areas, we also asked for qualitative data. What would you keep? What would you change? Other comments. And so we are still analyzing that data, and we'll be using it to inform our professional learning for the remainder of the school year as we continue to collect each time when we do professional learning. As a wrap-up, as Conti said, this has been a collaborative effort across all departments, so we just wanted to recognize our curriculum and instruction team, our multilingual team, our student support and health services team, our special education team, our assistant superintendent team, the Cerna and Hiram Johnson facilities teams, and the many departments who provided essential learning and support to our educators as we began the school year. It was truly a collaborative effort. Thank you. There you go.
Good evening. Just doing a reminder on some of the facility items that are happening. Start of school, it's hot, and then we transition into smoky days. So our ventilation air filtration systems have all been checked this summer. We're continuing some of those COVID mitigation efforts. MERV 13 filters are installed and replaced this summer and will be done multiple times throughout the school year. In those spaces that have it, we are continuing to bring in outside air at 100% in those units that can. On the hottest days and the smoky days, we do change those ventilation to keep indoor air quality at a safe level. We do blow in good air, or we turn over the air the 2 hours before and the 2 hours after. And we are making sure that our portable HEPA filters that are in those classrooms that do not have MERV 13s, the filters are on site already. And when the red light comes on, it's time to change. For our air quality days, we do have a plan in place. Facilities is ready to react. Again, we have manipulated the mechanical systems to take and handle all of our air days. If it's smoky days, hot days, etc., so that school is not interrupted. We have over 6,000 units in our school district mechanically. Each of the first 7 days of school, we averaged about 25, 30 emergency work orders for air conditionings coming down. I like that ratio, but that doesn't mean that there aren't inconveniences along the way, especially on those days when it's 115. So I applaud our staff acknowledging those air quality days and those ventilation days are important, and we react to it. Disinfection, we continue with those hot spots. Door handles, office spaces, we have staff clean restrooms. We're eating back indoors in some spaces when it's really hot and or those smoky days. We're prepared for that, and the turnover and making sure that we're disinfecting those spaces continuously. And then our night spaces, we still have all the tools that we've had with COVID-19 to react to any COVID outbreaks as directed by Victoria Flores and her team. So we're able to react to those kind of things. Nutrition services.
Thank you. Good evening. I have just a couple updates. I wanted to start by sharing a little news about the free meals for all in California. This is no-cost breakfast and lunch for all of our schools, including all of our associated charter schools that we serve meals to. Obviously, this is a lifeline for our families at a time when food costs, fuel, and housing have risen. I thought it was important to note here tonight that we did still distribute meal applications at some schools, which was required. That helps determine whether the meals are covered with federal funding or whether they're covered with state funding. And then that was about 10 schools, and the other 70 schools that we serve were distributed LCFF applications, and then we continue to follow up with LCFF applications at all schools for the quality of life benefits that are applied to those, including PABT, which will be coming out again in December, other connectivity programs, standardized testing, and then also for LCFF and Title I funding. And then I have a quick central kitchen update. I'm super excited that we have our opening crew of staff. We have about 12 employees in there. We plan to hire up to 30, 40 staff. We do believe it'll take up to 3 years to hire and train all of our staff and be fully operational. New this fall on the menus, you're going to see freshly prepared granola made with local honey from Woodland, pasta salads, sandwiches, and wraps that are scratch-made taco ingredients, and chicken for several dishes, and a variety of tossed salads and freshly prepared breakfast items. We're working to expand our plant-based and vegetarian options, and we will focus on more culturally diverse menu going forward. Our fresh salad bars have returned to all of our elementary schools, and the students have been super excited about that. And this month, we featured yellow watermelon from Full Belly Farms, organic watermelon. And that's my quick update. Thanks.
Good evening. I was going to say President, Board Member Rhodes, no, Superintendent. Just to keep moving things forward, we're glad to be here with the Office of Safe Schools update. And we went from reimagining to reality, as you can see. We have our safety coordinator, Melissa Navarro, Anthony Jones, safety officer. We have the notorious Max Conrad, who is now a lead campus monitor. Howard Berry, who's a safety officer. Kenneth Jefferson, who's a safety officer. We even grabbed our own manual from our security team to come over, Manuel Marino to come over, and Johnny Martin, who's assigned to Hiram Johnson High School. And it's been a phenomenal summer. Got to appreciate all of the work from HR and Rose's team to help us bring this into fruition. But as you remember, we were talking about reimagining safety, and we're continuing to build. We have interviews next Monday to bring on the other 6 lead campus monitors. And for right now, that will fulfill phase 2. And we'll start getting real comfortable with how we can support our school sites from that point. But we're going to continue working to modify our comprehensive school safety plans as new guidance comes out, is outlined by the Education Code. Part of that is to also, we don't want to lose sight of making sure our students that have disabilities and our vulnerable populations are noted, and our plans also are mindful of any accommodations they might need. And we're continuing to have outreach with stakeholders and our nonprofit organizations as part of the efforts. We have big football games coming up, and we will still have our community partners showing up as that additional layer, in addition to Sacramento Police Department for those large large events. Ongoing communication planning for our schools, trying to work to support our parades and our rallies and all these things, and also providing additional resources to support. We really can do better, I think, with our parent engagement as it relates to safety, which we're looking forward to. If you remember the gaps that we had identified, that was kind of the slides, what are we going to do about this? You can see that we have our acronyms filling in on those to help out with that with our safety officers and lead campus monitors. I want to point out that with our mental health, we're sticking to our USD protocols. We are not intervening. However, we will be there helping alongside if needed. But the notion is that we will, instead of calling law enforcement up front, we have some assistance and folks to help out and to call them if it's a last resort. But responding to dangerous situations, we just have more adults, more safety-minded folks to come alongside at each school site. And so from, each bullet point all the way to assessing and investigating threats to school safety, working together with our school site administration. Being prepared, we have the assistance as well with our safety officers, our drills, working with our school site administration to make sure that folks master what our best practices are when it comes down to our drills at school sites. And also, we actually rolled out WeTip. We're waiting for our communications or our posters to come through so we can start to get the information out in a way that's going to be efficient. But we have linked up to make sure that that system is in place and we're ready to respond to tips even as we speak. So we kind of went over a lot of the training this summer. A lot of work went in. These guys really showed up and helped pitch in. Even when our football team, our football season got off to a start before school, we were able to provide the extra support at Hughes Stadium, which is one of the bigger requires the most safety resources. And we had a threat assessment training that we were able to not only offer to our own schools, our school staff, but we opened it up to our community partners as well so that we're all understanding the process for threats and we're all kind of understanding what goes into that. And it was a phenomenal turnout. Just to reiterate, I know that our gang violence grant is coming up, and we are still we're still committed to working in a responsible way to support our gang volatile students. And there will be no truancy sweeps, but instead we're going to case manage and work with our law enforcement agencies who are dealing with situations in our community and look to and figure out how we can better support those students. All right, so with that being said, I'll hand it over and we'll keep it going.
Good evening. From Human Resource Services, we would like to share some very exciting news and acknowledge the positive, including the tireless efforts of our HR department staff who have worked literally night and day to accomplish filling the following. 279 certificated vacancies have been filled, 274 classified vacancies, 57 administrative vacancies, 389 resignations and retirements have been processed, in addition to 119 newly hired substitutes to fill those daily vacancies. In addition, we have also processed 56 leaves of absence and their resulting vacancies. Currently, there are classroom vacancies as well. We do recognize that we do still have work to do. Currently, there are 69 total classroom vacancies, which include 32 elementary 37 secondary, and 4 being held to contract. All in all, there are a total of 161 FTE vacancies still existing. And I'd like to explain held to contract. So held to contract means that the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing Guidelines require us to notice the teacher that they must remain in their position under contract until they are released. So until we fill that position, we require that the teacher stays if there is a resignation that occurs throughout the school year. We hold teachers to their contracts should they resign from the district on or after July 1st. We're able to release them once we have a suitable replacement. These teachers are supporting classrooms while a vacancy is posted, which is included in the total number of vacancies. So of these vacancies, 7 are new in June, 5 in July, 10 in August, and 2 on September 2nd due to increased enrollment.
Good evening, Board and Superintendent. My name is David Van Atten, and I am the Secondary Director of Human Resources. What I'm going to present is I'm going to expand on what Ms. Rose just shared. This is disaggregated data showing where those vacancies are. Now, to note, these are current classroom vacancies. So what you see in front of you does not represent all of our vacancies. We have about another 80-some that are non-classroom vacancies for a total of about 161. Like most districts in the region, in the state, even in the nation, we are having some difficulty in certain key areas, special education being one of them. We've got a shortage of English teachers, and it seems like always math and science. This is first day school substitute data. It is a little bit dated now, but we thought we would still share it with you. You can see that on the first day of the 2022-23 school year, we had 152 substitute requests. That number is slightly higher than what we typically see if you remove 2021. And we are still in the process of analyzing the reasons for that and trying to determine if it is just an anomaly or if perhaps there's some other pattern that we need to be aware of and address. Thank you. And I think with that, I am turning it over to the Enrollment Center.
Good evening, everyone. The Enrollment Center has online, The Enrollment Center has online registration available 24 hours a day, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Once parents submit applications online, a technician will reach out to them by email, text, or phone. The Enrollment Center hours of operation with in-house support. We are open Monday through Thursday, 8 to 3:30 p.m., closed for lunch, 11:30 to noon, and then we're open Fridays, 8 to 11 a.m. However, the lobby hours are open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m., and this is where the parents have access to pick up and drop off applications, paper applications. Parents also have the options to enroll at the school site on August 15th until tomorrow, September 16th. Our mock center, which is our matriculation orientation center, are available by phone through our language lines to contact parents within 24 hours if parents need assistance. So our projected enrollment numbers versus our current numbers. So for the 22-23 school year, the projected numbers enrollment was 36,543 enrollment, and our actual numbers as of August the 30th was 37,194 enrollment. So we had an increase of 651 students. And of course, enrollment is changing and being monitored daily. Thank you.
Member Rhodes, we almost made it. We almost did it. I'm the last one. Good evening, board members. I'm Brian Heap, Chief Communications Officer. As you all know, I was blessed when I came into this role to have a really good team around me already, and I think that we're doing some good things in communications. We still have some things to work on, but we're getting there. Wanted to let you know that, as the board's aware, we had, Kansi, is it 18 plus or minus new principals this year at school sites? So we wanted to make sure that they were, they had the information that they needed in order to be successful and be set up to succeed at their school sites. So in conjunction with Victoria's team, we made sure that they had some valuable information in their toolkit in terms of mental and physical health supports for students and information that they might need there. We also wanted to make sure that they had the support they needed from a communication standpoint to be able to reach their families, tell them about events and things that are happening on campus, good or bad. And also, if media, for example, were to contact them, give them some suggestions on how to respond and make sure that they felt like they could handle those kinds of situations when they came up. So this toolkit is something that they all have access to through one Google Drive, and they will continue to access it throughout the school year. And also, talking about some of the communications that we've been doing, I know that some of the board members have mentioned to me that you've noticed the difference, and we appreciate that. We are trying. We are trying to improve the way that we're communicating with families. We're trying to be simpler. We're trying to engage them a little bit more, doing some videos, things like that, trying to find better ways to reach them as opposed to just having them read everything in an email message. But as you can see listed here, some of the things that we were made sure to reach out to families ahead of the start of the school year so that they had this important information as we got ready to open classes. And that's all we have.
Thank you so much. And by the way, we coordinate, sir. Kansi? So right now we're going to first check if we have any public comment around the item.
We have two.
Okay.
Taylor Kayada and then Terrence Gladney.
Sounds good. Mr. Kayeda?
Good evening, everyone. First, I would just like to say thank you on behalf of the community to everyone who just gave their presentation. I know we like to thank teachers a lot because we see them day to day, but we need our administrators also. We need to value them, especially in our academic office. We've seen a lot of turnover now this year, and that actually leads me to my point that I wanted to get to. Despite all this great work, something that's happened at my school site, and I think has been happening throughout the district, is that Reading Eggs was canceled this year. And I got multiple letters sent home saying, please pay so we can keep it for your kids. It seems to me like what happened is there was a decision at the CERNA level that didn't get sent down to the teachers in time for them to update their curriculums. And now parents are being asked to pay for this thing that teachers I think were planning on having the school pay for. I'm able to pay for that, but it's an equity issue, like many things. Maybe there's school sites where the teachers are planning on this and they don't want to ask all their families, give us $10 for each kid for the year. So I would just really like to know what's happening with that. I see you're looking at me, Superintendent. If you know what's going on, I know you can't really go into too much detail in public comment here, but if you could explain what happened. This bothers me in particular, not because it's $10, and not and I know there's a lot of change over the past couple of years. It's the same thing we have with field trips, where some schools go to field trips and some don't. Some have PTAs that can raise a lot of money and some don't. And in this time right now where we have a lot of good one-time money we can use, we shouldn't be in a situation where parents are being asked to pay for things that really should be academic programs. So that's really it, but just to wrap it back up to where I started, thank you so much to everyone here. I really do appreciate the work that happens in CERNA. I know it can, people like to say we should focus on the other teachers, but it's a whole one big family, so thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. Gladney?
I'll echo Taylor and thank everyone that presented. What the numbers around vacancies and gaps in our staffing levels don't reflect, I mean, they show numbers, but they don't reflect the individual families and students that are affected. So let me give you a story about a family that has a special needs, nonverbal autistic student heading into high school. That goes throughout the whole summer with no certainty of where their child is going to be placed, and they find out on Monday or Tuesday, and school starts on Thursday. Or another family that has twin autistic students, brothers, one is verbal, one's nonverbal, and post the start of the school year, they're split. One is going to a completely different high school. Again, these are all freshman high school students. When we talk about safety, we talk about academic excellence, including the neediest students. Where's their story captured in this presentation? So we have to talk about the whole entire picture, right? Going back to the MTSS portion of the presentation, following the BAAB presentation, we were told by the superintendent that it was hopeful that it was included on that night and that it would answer a lot of our questions. The Carnegie Foundation, which was included in the Venn diagram, speaks to their focus on removing inequities specifically for Black students, Native American students, and they call students out by race, by subgroup. I don't see that reflected there. Those are our neediest students. Where is anti-racism on the MTSS presentation? How are we proceeding with additional cohorts when the ask that I have made in this very space for the impact of MTSS on the success or continued failure of Black students has not been presented? We talk about data, but again, we have to really just be honest with, are we just following another set of letters, or is there a real purpose behind it? These outcomes are not new, they're continual, and I just don't see how having 3 days of brand new professional learning as classrooms are supposed to open are really serving our students in the best way.
Thank you so much for your comments. Is that all public comments, sir? Okay, at this time, we'd like to open it up to board discussion. So board members, if you have something that you would like to add to this, please line up in the queue. Member Villa?
I don't have anything wild and crazy to say, but honestly, this is a wonderful presentation to come back to school and see so many positive things. I know there was a lot of concerns on vacancies and finding, teachers to fill those spots, and you guys have done a great job at that. The communications team, that's something very close to me. I really appreciate the work you're doing there. I mean, every department, the safety, everything, I really was impressed with this presentation. Obviously, we always know that we have work to do, but this is the way that I wanted the year to start, with so many positive things and showing our community that we have the team in place right here, that you guys are doing amazing work. So I'm very thankful. I'm very appreciative. I know, as Terrence had mentioned in public comment, there's a lot of work to be done, but this is a great start, and I'm very, very thankful for all of you.
Thank you, Board Member Villa. And can we have Student Board Member McGurk?
Hello, yes, I do thank you for the Office of Safety. I do have some concerns, though. I am grateful for your guys' work, but the mental health crisis and prevention, there is a few things that I've saw at school, which sadly really deepens my heart. Some problems we had was bullying, and I witnessed it just today, and the person just let it happen while someone just simply kissing, like PTA, they were stopped. It was very upsetting. Why is PTA such a big thing while someone right in front of them is getting bullied? I hope we can try to find a solution in this. But I do thank you for your guys' work. You guys did amazing presentations.
Thank you, Student Board Member McGurk. Do we have any others? Seeing none, I'll just end it off by saying fabulous presentation, guys. One of the things that are... Oh, I see you. You're good. Board Member Phillips will end it off. But what I was saying is we understand what our deficits are, and we see them, and we see them fed to us almost daily, but it's really good to hear what our assets are and uplifting those assets while still working on the things that we need to fix, so two things can live in the same place simultaneously. And so we thank you for uplifting our assets today as we continue to work on those deficits. So Board Member Phillips, I'll let you end it off.
Okay, I'm gonna end it.
Hi, Dr. McCarn. I am, Mr. Gladney mentioned data, and I think that there is really an issue with us getting information that hasn't been disaggregated, something that doesn't break it down completely. I'm not going to be critical. This is actually a very, very good presentation. I just really want to see that representation more. I'm not sure how it's done though, because that's your guys' job, because I cannot do it. But that helps to feed more of my feeling informed about what's going on with Black and brown students, our marginalized folks. So it's really important just to me that we have some information, even if it's going to be controversial and startup stuff. I would rather see it broken down in a way that people are able to relate to it individually.
And we thought that was the last, but it's not. We have Board Member Wu as well, and he will wrap it up tonight, possibly.
Thank you. I was just wondering, in the current enrollment, is that with or without the charters included?
Yes, please.
So 37,194 without the charters. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Wu. And seeing no other, you can say any last words you have to say, and then we'll go off to our next ones.
Just on behalf of the entire team that you saw and many others who you didn't see, thank you for giving us the time in this space. Again, with that through line of, we know we have things we need to continue to work on. We know there is growth. We wanted to be able to share, though, at the same time, the things that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you
Beautiful.
on behalf of the team.
Thank you guys so much. And seeing that this is not an action item, only informational, we are going to move to our next item, 8.2, approval resolution number 3282, recognition of Attendance Awareness Month. Care team, hello guys. We would all love a care shirt, by the way. I don't even know if Jennifer heard me. Jennifer, we would all love care shirts.
Oh, you're getting care shirts.
Okay.
Don't worry. I have care bags for you. I just didn't want to pass them out.
Very nice. I
before.
was speaking for our student board member, definitely. He definitely.
We have one for you, for sure. We have a whole bunch, and we'll be giving them all out this weekend at the community event. So I'm sure you'll all be there.
Okay, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Superintendent Aguilar, members of the board. My name is Jennifer Kretschmann, and I am the Director of MTSS Student Attendance and Engagement. So as you all know, post-pandemic, chronic absence is at an all-time high. So this is a quick and brief highlight of the work we are doing this year. We will have a much longer and larger presentation about all of our work around chronic absence soon. So I just want to take a quick moment to share some of the highlights of the phenomenal work my team is currently engaged in. The Be Here office is now known as the CARE team. Next slide. Oh, do I have the clicker? And no one is going to do it but me. There we go. There's our CARE logo. So CARE, as you can see on the shirts, it says connect, ask, relate, and engage. During the pandemic, we quickly learned that relationships were at the core of all of our work. So we aligned our mission and our vision to focus on building and maintaining those key connections with students, families, and our community. This is a quick clip. And if you have some time, please visit our new CARE website. It's care.scusd.edu. And it's a beautiful resource, and it's actually for all stakeholders. So teachers, staff, families, students, board members, the entire Sac City community. And this leads me to what I was just talking about. We've been working really closely with Nicole Kangas and the entire comms team to organize and host this Saturday's Wide Open Walls community event at Elder Creek Elementary. And it's in celebration of Attendance Awareness Month. There will be free backpacks, school supplies, haircuts, amazing motivational speakers, performers, dance classes. It's all to welcome this new school year. We hope to see you guys there and the entire community there. And then this leads me to the whole purpose of why we're here today, and that's Attendance Awareness Month. I'd like to introduce Esteban Ball, a member of my team, who will lead us through the resolution.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, Superintendent Aguilar and respected board members. I am Esteban Ball. I'm part of the Attendance and Engagement Department at Sacramento City Unified School District. I, along with my colleagues, Sandra Laird and O'Neill Sanchez, are representing for the rest of our team, Andrea Torres, Monica Lopez Larios, Lucy Lewis, Carla Cortez, and our team lead, Jennifer Kretschmann. The vision statement of CARE is authentic relationships with students, families, and the community are the foundation of our work to reduce chronic absence, increase student engagement, and ensure academic success for all students, especially our most vulnerable. As we return to in-person learning, we need to take a strategic, transformative, and long-term approach, engaging students and families this school year. To start this effort, we would like to recognize September 2022 as Attendance Awareness Month. During this month, we encourage our school communities to rebound with attendance by joining in our attendance awareness celebrations, informing families of the negative impacts of our chronic absence, and recognizing positive school attendance. I'm going to read off the proclamation of September 22 Attendance and Awareness Month. So whereas the COVID-19 pandemic and other crises have eroded positive conditions for learning and created an absenteeism crisis, whereas chronic absence, missing 10% or more of school, alert schools, community partners, and families that one or more positive conditions for learning are not in place. Whereas students are more likely to attend when positive conditions for learning, physical and emotional, health and safety, a sense of belonging, connection and support, academic challenge and engagement, and adults and peers with social emotional competency are in place. Whereas the impact of absenteeism and punitive approaches to school discipline to contribute to the achievement gap that separates students living in low-income communities and many of our students of color from their peers who may have more resources to make up for lost learning time in the classroom. Whereas showing up for school is an opportunity for students to build routine that can create a sense of safety and belonging, increase engagement and develop trusting relationships with peers, teachers, school staff, and to increase engagement and motivate them to participate in learning. I'm going to turn over to Sandra Laird.
Whereas reducing absenteeism requires taking a comprehensive approach that begins with prevention and early intervention and adopting trauma-informed approaches rather than responding with punitive action. Whereas improving attendance and reducing absenteeism takes schools, families, and community partners working together to identify and address factors contributing to students missing school, particularly a lack of digital access, mental and physical health services, and access to basic economic supports, including food and housing. Whereas partnering with students and families to monitor attendance, as well as understand and address barriers to attendance, requires building and sustaining caring relationships and regular communications in the home language spoken by families. Whereas research found, even before the pandemic, that families had high aspirations for their children, yet face significant barriers in getting their children to school or lack the knowledge that showing up nearly every day to school was crucial to academic achievement. Whereas taking attendance daily in a consistent manner and for different types of learning opportunities, remote or in person, is essential to identifying when students begin to miss too much school. Whereas promoting attendance requires noticing, as soon as possible, when students are starting to miss too much school, in order to engage students and families, identify and offer needed support and early intervention resources. Whereas ensuring an equal opportunity to learn requires using data to detect high levels of absenteeism and missed opportunities to learn by school, grade, and student population.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that Sacramento City Unified School District stands with the nation in recognizing September as Attendance Awareness Month. We hereby commit to focusing on reducing absenteeism and addressing the factors that cause students to miss school in order to ensure all children an equitable opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive academically, emotionally, and socially. We recognize that we must work together to engage students and families and send a message that learning can and must continue. Specifically, we will, 1, affirm the importance of showing up and reflect with students and families on what is needed to make showing up to school worthwhile, especially given the challenges experienced during the pandemic. 2, make clear that improving attendance, including taking daily attendance in a consistent manner and monitoring absenteeism, continues to be a top priority. 3, use an expanded set of data to monitor outcomes for different populations of students, raise public awareness, establish goals, allocate resources, track progress, and assure accountability for equal opportunity to learn. 4, engage in activities like walking school buses, attendance buddies, or transition programming for new students that help students build regular attendance routines. 5, engage students, families, educators, and the broader community, including civic and elected leaders, local businesses, clergy members, and nonprofit organizations, in working together to identify and remove barriers to getting to school and develop meaningful solutions that ensure all children and youth keep learning despite the challenges of COVID-19. 6, celebrate and build community through our SUSD activation community events aimed at removing barriers for our families. 7, use chronic absence data along with other indicators to identify where the instructional losses are occurring and invest additional resources in schools and school-related programs, including tutoring, expanded learning, community school strategies, and health services. 8, focus on rebuilding authentic relationships with students, families, and the community to reduce chronic absence, increase student engagement, and ensure academic success for all students, especially our most vulnerable. And 9, use an MTSS framework to uplift all of our students, especially those who have been failing for years, first by ensuring they attend school.
And I just wanted to end on a positive note. So we were looking at the data today, and last year at this time, about 26.5% of our students were chronically absent. This year, under 20%, so 19.4% of our students are currently chronically absent. And at our focus schools, so those are 20 schools that had really high rates of chronic absence, where we are implementing the MTSS framework around attendance and engagement, we're closer to 15%. So our hope is for that number to continue to decline using the MTSS framework and all of our different interventions like our beautiful Tier 1 community event this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. At this time, do we have any public comment on the item?
We do have one. Terrence Gladney has signed up.
Okay, Mr. Gladney. Floor is yours. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, guys. I'll start on a positive note. I do appreciate that this resolution has actionable items. I think that that's a change. And also I do recognize the difference in tone of staff and the collective board, at least acknowledging, probably for the first time I can ever remember, that we have deficiencies and not just isolating, our attention on the positives. Really quickly, attendance crisis is not new. It states as much on the last whereas statement, but it actually contradicts the first statement that says basically that the COVID pandemic created an absenteeism crisis. So they're conflicting statements with the first and last whereas statements. And it also alludes that COVID eroded positive conditions, but we know the learning gaps have existed perpetually. So I see a lot of conflict there, and I would just probably recommend a rewrite so it at least, holds true to the reality that we're in. In the actionable items, Walking school buses are a great reactive measure, but if we fulfill the promises of neighborhoods that lost their schools and had them closed and had promises that they were going to have their kids safely bused to schools, that would probably be an even better start than actually a walking school bus. Because a walking school bus, for instance, for the kids that go to Pony that live in Meadowview, they still have to walk across Freeport. A bus could transport, and the bus is designed to stop at railroad tracks and dangerous intersections. So that's probably a better use of our resources, because walking school buses require additional investment of people like myself to make sure those kids get there safely. Again, I don't know how we're going to lean on MTSS when it's an unproven model. We're still in the middle of implementing cohorts, so I wouldn't lean on that as something we can live or die by. But a lot of the resolutions and fixes and solutions have been proposed since the first cohort of the LCAP. So I think that the template is there, and this language is a great start. But if we include some of those things that have been recommended and asked for repeatedly, then I think that strengthens and empowers not only this document, but the people that are behind it. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Gladley. Do we have any other public comments?
We do not.
Okay, seeing that we have no more public comments, I would like to open up to my colleagues. You guys have anything? Put up in the queue if you do. So this is an action item. So we're going to go with a motion from second, a student preferential. Roll call.
Member Villa,
Yes.
Member Morowski,
Aye.
Member Rhodes,
Aye.
Member Phillips, Member Wu.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you guys for your presentation. We'll see you guys on Saturday, yeah? All right, moving on to item 8.3. Approve resolution number 3286, recognition of National Hispanic Heritage Month. Today also at 12 o'clock is the grito, if you guys don't know about that, but it's always a good time. I won't be there because we'll be here, but it's always a good time, so.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, members of the board and Superintendent Aguilar. It is our honor today to recognize September 15th as National Hispanic Heritage Month. And I want to start by just sharing a personal story that I was reflecting coming here thinking, wow, I could be at the grito right now or the board meeting. And then I thought, but you know what, I'm presenting, I better be at the board meeting. But what is so special about this is that when we think about heritage, we think about history, background, roots, and the beauty of it is sitting in this room, everyone here, someone here that we know is of Hispanic heritage. And so we want to celebrate everyone today who is here of Hispanic heritage. So please join me in celebrating everyone, Dr. McCarn and everyone here in the room. Your contributions, as well as all of our students' contributions here in Sac City, just make us diverse and special. Many school districts that we know of, are not as diverse as Sac City. And when I look at the data and I look at 17,000 students of Hispanic background, which make up about 41%, or thinking about the students who want to engage in getting a seal of biliteracy award in Spanish, that makes me so proud. Not just because I am of Hispanic heritage, but because I see the beauty in how it's globally recognized. So today, Dr. McCarn and I are bringing the resolution forward and in honoring our heritage. Dr. McCarn.
Thank you, Dr. Sims. It's so weird to say that. I know, it's so cool. Dr. Sims.
I love it.
Dr. Sims, thank you. Yes, I could not say anything better than was just shared. We know that, as you've heard through all the presentations, right, we're growing, we are starting to see things that we didn't see as clearly before. We have staff that's working really hard and in support of things just like this. So that we have a resolution before you to help celebrate the recognition of National Hispanic Heritage Month for not just our 17,000 plus students, our staff, our community, everyone that's included in that. So with that, well, we'll just stay on this slide. Well, with that, we would just ask that you take a look and approve this. We are so proud to have 998 students who received the Spanish language seal of biliteracy last school year, and look forward to the great work the multilingual department is doing to increase that number. So with that, we ask for your approval of this really important resolution.
Thank you so much. Do we have any public comment on the item?
We do not.
Okay, do we have any board discussion on the item, anything? You guys want to say anything? Okay, first off, this is a great recognition, and to recognize our families and people who make an impact in our everyday community is very important. So I want to thank you guys for bringing this forward, and I will move it forward. First motion. Do we have a second? Okay.
Member Villa?
Aye.
Member Morowski?
Aye.
Member Rhodes?
Aye.
Member Phillips? Member Wu?
And our student preferential. Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much for today, and we're going to move to our next item. And you have time to make to the grito. They're still there. Okay, moving on to item 8.4, approval resolution number 3283, National Suicide Prevention and Recovery Month. Victoria Flores and our own board member Morowski.
Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Aguilar. I'm Victoria Flores. I serve as your Executive Director of Student Support and Health Services. I'm here in support and just to offer a few brief remarks about Board Resolution 3283, National Suicide Prevention and Recovery Month. So September 4th through the 10th was the National Suicide Prevention Week, and September, as well as being, attendance awareness and Hispanic recognition, is also National Recovery Month. This is really a focus on raising awareness and that prevention is possible. Also raising hope that recovery does happen and people do recover. We know, we're probably familiar, our U.S. Surgeon General had declared a national youth mental health crisis. We know the COVID pandemic really negatively impacted our youth. We saw this across our schools. Even pre-pandemic, we knew that 1 in 5 of our Sac City kids seriously considered suicide, and 1 in 12 even made an attempt. And so we know that education is key, recognizing those signs and reaching out, saying something, as scary as it can be. And so SCUSD, I'm really proud to say, has taken several really key steps here. All of our staff annually complete an evidence-based training. It's online, it's virtual, and it interacts with you, called Cognito, about suicide prevention. They also did the module in support of LGBTQ youth. We've also provided easy access and navigation to community-based resources through Care Solace, and you've likely seen this in some of our communications, and then significantly expanding our school-based mental health resources across our whole district. This is inclusive of school nurses, school psychologists, school counselors, school social workers, as well as our mental health specialists. So we respectfully request the board pass and adopt Board Resolution 3283.
Thank you so much. Do we have any public comment? Do we have any public comment? Okay. Board? Member Morowski.
Yes, thank you so much, Victoria. And don't have much to add to that. I mean, you've been at this. I think Sac City has been at this. We've made great strides in expanding our mental health programming and workforce. I think the rest of the state, the country is finally catching on that this is such a critical issue for all of our students. 1 in 5 Sac City students, I just want to repeat that statistic. 1 in 5 of our students have seriously considered committing suicide. That is staggering. That is staggering. And I just want to remind us all, there is always hope, there is always help, and we need to ask. And if someone is crying out for help or talking about it, it's okay. Just, get them out of their shell, talk about it, make sure that they can get referred to someone who can really help, a professional. And there's no, there shouldn't be stigma. Any one of us could be in that situation. And so really appreciate all the work that we've done, and we just have to keep doing things like this and raising awareness. So thank you, and ask for your aye vote. Thanks.
That is a motion. But before I have one, I think that this work is very important, and what people don't understand sometimes, we think about this type of thing that's happened, and I can literally remember elementary school, at least 2 students who committed suicide when I was a student. And so this type of work is very important in our district. Uplifting it and paying attention is really going to help a lot of students. So we have a motion. Oh, we have student board member who would like to also have a word as well. No problem.
I do appreciate your work as someone who also has who almost died. I just want to say to all of my fellow peers that even though it's really hard right now, that it's okay to reach out. I know it's going to take a little while, but it's better than you being gone.
With that motion and second, can we have a roll call?
Member Villa?
Aye.
Member Morowski?
Aye.
Member Rhodes?
Aye.
Member Phillips? Member Wu?
Student preferential? Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much. Moving on to 8.5, Early Literacy Support Block Grant updates. This is an informational item. Thank you guys very much.
Good evening again. Thank you for having us here. We are here to present some information on the Early Literacy Support Block Grant. This is Dr. Shannon Pella. She is our Director of Professional Learning for English Language Arts, Literacy, and Humanities. We also have we have 2 principals here from our ELSB schools, Africa Fulev, who is joining us from John Sloat, and Nate McGill from Ethel Baker. I'll hand it over to Shannon.
Good evening. I'd like to begin by grounding the Early Literacy Support Block Grant in the core values and guiding principles of our district. The ELSB grant specifically provides funding to address inequities and mitigate achievement and opportunity gaps, and as such is clearly aligned to our core values and guiding principles. For your reference, the glossary provides definitions for some of the curricula and teacher professional learning experiences that are part of the ELSB grant implementation. You might consider flipping back to these as needed when I share about the ELSB grant implementation. As a brief overview, the ELSB grant was enacted in a Senate bill of the 2020-21 state budget that appropriated $50 million to establish the Early Literacy Support Block Grant Program. CDE used the 2018-2019 summative CASP data to identify 75 schools across the state with the highest percentage of third graders scoring at level 1, and 4 of our elementary schools were identified. The goal of the ELSB grant is to develop literacy instruction and support programs from TK through 3, ultimately resulting in improved student outcomes. Consistent with our district's core values, guiding principles, and focus on developing a multi-tiered system of supports, the ELSB grant provides opportunity for our ELSB schools to strengthen Tier 1 instruction by building a structured literacy approach based on the science of reading in the early grades. So what is the science of reading? The science of reading is not new. In fact, it is a decades-long consensus in the research literature about what matters and what works in literacy instruction. Hollis Scarborough, who is a leading literacy researcher, designed this visual metaphor to depict the components of a fully developed approach to reading instruction. So the science of reading is a convergence of evidence that the many strands pictured here in the rope are needed in order to develop a skilled reader. Structured literacy instruction is drawn from the science of reading and is a systematic, cumulative, explicit, and diagnostic approach to teaching early literacy. It's systematic and cumulative because the lessons are organized logically. They begin with the easiest concepts and build towards the more difficult. It's cumulative because each of the lessons in a structured literacy approach builds on previously learned concepts. Teaching is explicit because it's direct, intentional, multisensory, and interactive. And it's diagnostic because assessment, which is critical to all instruction, especially literacy instruction, is ongoing both formally and informally. And that teachers are looking for automaticity as students are learning to read. So before I detail what structured literacy looks like in our year one implementation of our ELSB sites, just a quick look at the budget. The grant total was over $3 million, and each school has spent a significant portion of their budget to launch this work and continues to identify ways to use their funding to grow students' reading skills. Year one implementation, which was last year from 2021 to 2022. Each of the 4 categories listed across the top of this table are the allowable areas for grant expenditures. I summarized all 4 of the annual reports to show common themes across each category. For instance, in order to provide access to high-quality literacy teaching, you'll notice in the table that all 4 schools have purchased literacy, evidence-based literacy curriculum and have also engaged teachers in evidence-based professional learning around literacy. In the category of support for literacy learning, there have been coaches employed and academic conferences which use the continuous cycle of improvement, which is indicated here by PDSA, which is Plan, Do, Study, Act. Under pupil supports, the sites have created culturally rich libraries, have enlisted community volunteers, and other types of community partners like social work interns, and have engaged in recognition nights for K-3 reading. Family and community supports last year from 21 to 22 were still limited because of COVID protocols, but those are areas that for year 2 implementation are continuing to be expanded. So when we look at year 2 implementation, this upcoming year, this is where we're expanding the use of the curriculum and continuing to develop the teacher professional learning. This year ahead of us includes the hiring of librarians, support staff, and literacy coaches, maintaining and building library resources, and a commitment to inviting families in the community back into our schools in family literacy nights and other events that build our relationships with the community and that at the same time enhance literacy. Although each of our ELSB sites, like all of our district CASP ELA data, shows, they all fall unacceptably below where they need to be on ELA CASP data. But although that is the case, we have looked closely at some of the ways that each school are growing in the right direction. So for AMWIN, for example, as they continue to build a coherent assessment instruction cycle of continuous improvement, we're looking at ways that they've actually made some inroads. The distance from the standard, the average distance from the standard between the 2018-19 ELA CASP data for 3rd grade and the 2023 CASP data for 3rd grade has decreased, which is a good thing. You want that second number to be lower because it means your scores are moving in the right direction. So that's good news for AMWIN. Also, their school climate survey is showing a very positive response rate. So those things that are hard to measure, like relationships with students and relationships with families in the community, are beginning to show up in some of those data. For Ethel I. Baker, Baker was one of 7 elementary schools in the district to improve on school-wide CASP ELA percentage of students meeting standards. And if you have any questions about that, we do have Nathan McGill, the principal of Ethel I. Baker, here tonight. They've also reduced suspension rates, and increased student satisfaction reporting through the district's Kelvin survey, which measures social and emotional learning responses of students. And then again, although we would hope 100% of our students at all of our sites would respond positively on our school climate surveys, 71% is a strong number, and Ethel I. Baker continues to work toward bringing that up to 100. John Still has engaged regularly in developing their Plan, Do, Study, Act continuous cycles of improvement in academic conferences. The teachers have responded very positively that they're learning how to look at data from regular assessments to improve their practices, and that they've also asked for more administrator walkthroughs, which is also a very good sign of teaching at John Still becoming more public, which is a very good thing. Also at John Still, the average distance from the standard decreased, and 70% of students are responding positively in the school climate survey. And finally, John Sloat is also showing that the gaps in data among students across different ethnic groups is not necessarily an issue at John Sloat, with 70% of Asian students, 72% of African American students, and 75% of Hispanic students are reporting positive experiences at school, and that is consistent with their white counterparts. Again, they have a 77% of positive responses on their school climate survey, and their number of students in second grade needing intensive support has dropped. And our new principal, Africa Fullove, is here today to respond to questions as well. Finally, we are moving towards strengthening practices in high-quality Tier 1 literacy instruction as we deepen and sustain implementation, capacity for becoming more data-informed, engaging with the community, increasing library opportunities, and accessing our technical assistance is also ongoing. We continue to engage through the lens of MTSS, and I will stop now and let you ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Do we have any public comment on the item?
We do not.
Okay. Do we have any board discussion? If so, please line up in the queue. Member Morowski.
Hey, thank you for the presentation, and thank you to our principals for being here and the work you're doing. Just wondering, kind of, it's, I guess this was the first year of the grant, and so putting into place those practices. But is this something that will take like the whole grant cycle? It's just, I feel like it's always really hard to move these numbers, right? That they seem very sticky. So just wondering about, is it like a several year process of developing that instructional model or the structured literacy approach, or are there other things going on that are just are outside of like what the school can control, or how do you see that? I'm very fascinated by this science-based approach to reading and just making sure we can do that.
So when you say the numbers are sticky, like it's not going that fast?
Well, it's just hard to, it just seems like they're always hard to move.
Yeah, I think it's representative that, with basically system-wide, nationwide regression with respect to kind of ELA outcomes, that the schools that have been involved in this have actually shown progress. Like that would be outlier data. And so I think it takes, depending on how well the plan is formed, at least a year to work those systems out. We had the good fortune of being in a shutdown year to make those plans first with our teams. And so, when the school year started last year, we were ready to start pretty quickly, and it actually affected every kid in the school, so grades 1 through 6. It may not show up, and this is kind of what we talk about, in what would be like a really standardized measure like a CASP, but where it really stood out was in our LPAC data, which was not mentioned in that, but that's essentially like a measurement for language learners. Our school has 41% language learners, and like, for example, second graders, the average increase was 60 points, which is more than a level. And so what that tells us is that in terms of total trajectory, there was growth in every grade for any student taking the LPAC. And if you can say that your English language learners are growing, it's not too crazy to extrapolate that all students will be growing. And you can call into question how important or valuable CASP data is to look at in a single time. And that's why we wanted to look at it in a certain cohort. So for example, our last year's 6th graders took the CASP in 3rd grade. That group of students improved over shutdown and over COVID and all of that, and they were involved in what we put in place. And I think a single cohort of students improving over that time is something that's like scalable and repeatable. Does that make sense? Because
Yeah.
basically everybody else went backwards.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. And I think, just the impact of COVID overall, I mean, to see the data. And it's like, I feel like it's so hard to even have a baseline anymore, knowing, what we would expect from pre-COVID through COVID to now.
In line with Shannon's presentation, like the science of reading it's as systematic and it's also consistent, and it really needs to be every day and explicit. And so without that, on distance learning, like there was none of that. And so we believe in it. Well, one, of course, we believe it's like repeatable and scalable for all schools, but for students to have just a single year of that, especially 5th and 6th grade students who tend to be not so motivated to learn how to read if they're not reading yet, we think it's pretty representative of something that could be a huge change for the kids.
Okay, thank you. Excited to see how this develops. And if I could just ask real quick, to Assistant Superintendent Hansen, maybe just to address like district-wide, how much fidelity do you think there is to the scientific literacy model?
Well, I would love to answer that question, but Shannon.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I'm happy to answer it, but I'd love for Shannon to come up and answer that because this is her area of expertise, and we're very excited to bring her on this year to be able to address this. So I'll defer to her for now.
Okay, thanks. So let me see if I've got your question right. So you're asking to what extent the entire district is engaged in a structured literacy approach? Is that correct?
Yeah, to what extent is the district, like district-wide, and engage in, I guess is the science-based literacy approach, that's structured literacy, same thing? Yes, okay, that's my question, yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to just start by saying that although the science of reading is not new, like I said earlier, that it's basically drawn from a consensus of literature, not only about the best practices for developing readers, but it's also about how the brain works when kids are learning, or anyone is learning how to read, that basically reading is very complex, that it is not something that the brain is naturally wired to do, and that engaging in an approach to reading that actually follows the science of reading is sort of like rewiring the brain. And teachers don't necessarily come out of the university teacher preparation programs with a solid foundation in teaching foundational skills. So in our district, we have a wide range of teachers with a wide range of experience in teaching early literacy. I would say that I feel very, very positive about the momentum and the extent to which teachers are engaging today. I I don't have exact numbers or percentages for you, but I could get them for you because we do have a lot of schools in our district that are buying the SIPS curriculum, which is a very explicit focus on phonemic awareness and phonological skills curriculum, and engaging in the training, and also engaging in letters training, which is another program out there that is not a curriculum, but it's a paradigm, basically, and a philosophy for teaching reading. So the momentum right now is very exciting and very strong. We also have a team of ELA, ELD training specialists that are becoming experts in their own right and on training in both of those, both the SIPS curricula and the foundational skills training. So I feel very confident that we are absolutely catching a momentum for a growing focus on structured literacy in our district. And I hope you ask me that question again in a year or two, and I'll be able to have really good, solid data for you. So keep that in mind, and I will be back. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I would love to, anything I can do to promote that approach, or provide resources in that direction. I mean, I think it's like the reading wars are over, I think, by a long shot, and I think the world needs to catch up, and we need to do what we know works. So thank you for what you're doing.
Okay. Next, Member Villa.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure who in this group, we talked about MTSS in our last presentation, but I don't know if we can talk about how this framework or what kind of program would this actually coincides with MTSS.
That is, thank you so much, Member Villa. You captured exactly what I was going to ask our team to also just make clear. This is a presentation that we're offering to the board and our community because we are responsible for doing so under the grant guidelines, but I think it's really just important to come back to what you're asking for, which is how does this interface with our MTSS work? How should our board and our community be thinking about this particular effort? And I think it's great that you'll hear this from our principals if they can share that with our board and our community. Thank you, Mr. McGill.
Okay, yeah, it's a really good question. When we describe like the structured literacy piece, it's how each site designs it for its kids. So for example, something that works really well is as students come, so the first or second week of school, everyone's getting a diagnostic test to see basically what their foundational reading skills are like. After that, we organize them by level. And then after that, we set a schedule. So essentially every student at the entire school exchanges with the teacher that's at the appropriate level for him or for her or for them. So if you are an advanced reader, or if you're a reader who has just come to the United States, we have a specific class for you. In that way, it coalesces with MTSS because, one, it requires us to know where our students are at all times because there's regular assessments that are built into the curriculum. But also, it helps you understand like the organization of your entire school system. So what are those supports? Well, technically, if I have a fifth grader who doesn't have any letter names or sounds, who has just come to our country, and he or she can learn them in a safe environment and with grade level peers, that's an intervention. But it's happening in the regular day. It's a homeroom. It's not a tutor. It's not something extra. It's not anything else we pay for. It's just us knowing how our students are doing, paying attention to those short-term assessment cycles, and then making sure they're in the right spot so that if I have specific reading needs, I'm with the right level group. And so SIPS is, like Shannon said, there are a number of curricula that organize that, but SIPS has the level for each student, and then they kind of grow within that. And so what's really important as you do it is these regular short or midterm cycle assessments. They're called mastery tests in SIP. And then depending on how students are doing, we may replace them. If a student is really like, we're going to look at growth over time. If a student is what should I say, reading faster than his or her peers, then they may need to go to the next level. So in that sense, it organizes it perfectly for MTSS, and then we have a really good idea of how students are going and how fast they're progressing. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you for that. And I would just like to say, this is great, and Principal Full. I will be stopping by to see this in action. Your school is walking distance from my house. So this was only an informational item. We're going to move on to our next item, which is item 8.6, Sacramento City Unified Leadership Program. Dr. McCarn.
Hi. Okay. Good evening, board members. I'm Tiffany Smith-Simmons, and I have the great pleasure this evening to share with you about a brand-new program in our district, the Sacramento City Unified Leadership Program, or known as SCOPE. Next slide. Oh, I have it. So here are a list of acronyms that I will refer to this evening: SCOPE and NASSP, the National Association of Secondary Principals. Okay, next slide. Next slide. What is SCOPE? SCOPE is a partnership between the Sacramento City Unified School District, Sacramento County Office of Education, and National University. Our participants will clear their administrative credential through this process. Why? So we have recent data as early as earlier in February that shares that we have an alarming rate of principals that plan to leave the profession. It says 4 out of 10 principals surveyed expected to leave the profession in the next 3 years for a number of reasons, the least of which is the recent pandemic and political tensions on campuses. So the impact of our SCOPE program, it's going to impact student achievement, impact teacher satisfaction and retention, and also overall improve our school culture. So in January, we began our recruitment for SCOPE. We held informational meetings where we had just under 100 people attend. Ms. Fuller was one, and we had 20 applicants. Of the 20 applicants, 11 were selected for the program.
I can just interject here in the great work that Dr. Tiffany Smith-Simmons is leading in collaboration with Dr. Steve Winlock at SCOE and with our national individuals as well. The impact and how this program began with obviously seeing the need. We know the need, we have the data, we have seen it, but being able to go to our school campuses, which is where this program idea even originated, specifically actually at one of our elementary schools, and the need. And so what you will hear more about and see the fruits of is pretty impactful, and as we have recently learned, being used as a model in other places.
So a little bit about the application process. Each applicant submitted a letter of intent or a letter of introduction, letters of recommendation, and they were interviewed by a panel. And the panel included our SCOE partner as well as current principals in our district. We modeled that application process to be a replica of their application process when they apply for an administrative position in our district, so they got a little bit of a running start there. Next, we have greetings from Dr. Winlock. He couldn't be here with us, but he wanted to share a little bit about the program and our partnership.
If we can have somebody click play on that, that would be awesome. He just did a short message for you, board. We can also just share that what he shared was a thanks to the board for your leadership and support of programs like this pipeline that we are working to build. A thanks and appreciation to the superintendent for his support and leadership in helping this go forward. And he also shares that this is a model that the County Office of Education intends to use in other places because there isn't one being done like that. Although he said it way better, at least you have a sense of what was shared.
And tonight, we actually launched the program with our participants. We met with our 11 SCOPE participants, with Dr. Winlock as well as Dr. Sewell, and we were all on Zoom, and they were learning about the process and when we will begin. Classes officially start for them on October 24th. So I wanted to just spend a few moments and just share with you who our SCOPE participants are. We have Sam Floyd, who's currently the principal at Leah Tata Floyd Elementary School. He's been in that school community for nearly 20 years. We also have Jasmine Perrin-Jones, who's currently serving as site instruction coordinator at John Still K-8. And we have Monica Kohler that will join the Theodore Judah Elementary School community as principal. And we have Katie Rodriguez, who's currently an intermediate autism teacher at Father Keith Buchanan. Also, we have Christina, Kosaki, who is currently the assistant principal at Ethel Baker. And we also have Ms. Fula that's here with us tonight. She's the principal at John Slow Elementary School. We have Nain Cha, who joined the Pacific Elementary community earlier this year as a site instruction coordinator and assistant principal. We have Malcolm Floyd, who has been a member of the CK and McClatchy community for a number of years, and he transitioned to a site instruction coordinator earlier this year. We have Naila Kai, currently the coordinator of student support health services, and she continues her role in that division. We also have Sarah Munn, who is a teacher at Luther Burbank. We have more participants. We have Sarah Nava, who is also a teacher at Father Keith Buchanan, who is also a participant in the program. I'm not sure what happened to the slides. But I just wanted to share with you just really the excitement. We are truly growing our own leaders in our district with these fabulous community members that stepped up to the challenge of leadership either at a site or in a department. So thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much. Do we have any public comment on the item?
There is none.
Seeing that there's none, we'll open up to board comment. Okay. Oh, Member Wu.
Thank you. Is there a commitment on their part?
Yes, that's a great question, Board Member Wu. There is a commitment. The program is 3 years. 1 year as a student at National University, 2 years clearing their credential with SCOE, and then a 4-year commitment beyond that. So they will be with us for 7 years in this program after they complete the program.
Acting President Rhodes, I just want to reiterate something that, and again, I wish that we had been able to view the video, but I had the opportunity to attend with you, actually, Acting President Rhodes, the Teacher of the Year banquet at the local hotel here. And I approached Dr. Winlock just thinking that it was important for me to thank SCOE for their support of this program. Just thinking that we were one of many districts that were engaged in this, and I was pleasantly surprised when he notified me that we are the only district that are engaged in this model in partnership with SCOE and National University. So I know that we often don't hear positive things about our work, but I think it is a source of pride for you as our board and for our community that SCOE is now looking at this as a model to replicate. And certainly we're proud that we started this and that we have such talent coming up the pipeline, and then that we will be able to create some succession just by way of identifying this talent, and you can see it in Ms. Fullov, and then retaining individuals and continuing to grow the program. So I just wanted to highlight that and just express that, of course, with all the modesty that we can.
Thank you, Superintendent. With that, we have Member Phillips.
I just want to say I'm so happy to hear this. If I had actually gone through school to be a teacher, I'd be in this program. I really, really appreciate the fact that we are, again, growing our own. And I have other things to say, but I'm just happy to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that this program is amazing. First off, we have, if we heard, we have principals who are leaving, administrators that are leaving, but this gives a huge opportunity for us to put in some qualified people in their stead, and it's a beautiful thing to have our internal folks being able to take these leadership opportunities. A lot of time in organizations, there's not opportunities to move up that quickly, or people might feel stagnated. But we're building something that can help push and elevate, and it can become a model for our region. And so I'm excited by that. I'm also excited about the number of people of color that you have also represented. I think that's a beautiful thing as well, to also not only build out, but seemingly making sure that people are representing our students and what they look like. So I appreciate having all of that in here, and I look forward to more of the work. With that being said, there's no other comments from the board. This is an informational item, so we're going to move on to our next item. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. Okay, so we're going to 9.0, remember that we have moved 9.7, 9.8, 9.9 after 9.2. So right now we're going to go to 9.1, approval of the 2021-22 year-end fiscal unaudited actuals by Ms. Rose Ramos.
Thank you, Vice President Rhodes. Good evening, board members, members of the public. We are presenting to you tonight the 21-22 unaudited actual financial report. And basically what this is our year-end reports for the 21-22 year. What this means is that this data contains the actual financial information for the year that we just ended. And the period that it covers is July 1 of 2021 through June 30th of 2022. So with that, let me get to the, okay, oops, sorry about that. Gosh, which way am I? Things a little sensitive. Okay, here's the agenda for this evening. I will be presenting to you the comparison of the year-end financial statements, which are the unaudited actuals, to the estimated actuals. And what the estimated actuals means is that that's the last budget update that the board received for the year 21-22. As you know, we adopt the budget, then throughout the year we revise the budget and we bring to you those updated numbers. So, and that was presented to you back in June, the updated budget for the prior year. And then we'll have a display of the use of one-time funds. We'll also then share the multi-year projections, how they look now with the updated beginning fund balances, and then end with the summary and next steps, and then request your approval. So with that, here is our table of acronyms. Of course, as you may see a few of these throughout the presentation, and I will pause on some of these slides in case there's clarifying questions. Okay, so this is a very busy slide, I understand that, but just important to share with you the highlights of the estimated actuals, which again were last year's budgeted numbers that were updated as of like June 23rd, right around that, presented to you June 23rd when you took action to adopt the budget for the new year. And then over to the right is our actual year-end financial statements. This is how we actually ended the year, which are referred to as the unaudited actuals. And then finally, that last column is the difference between the budgeted numbers and the actual numbers. And then we'll go over these to some degree at a high level presentation. And then within your executive summary, there's a lot of detail that explains those changes and the why. And then one of the things that I did want to call to your attention is about from the bottom, that green shaded bar, you're going to see the overall net change to our actual ending fund balances. And in this case, it's an improvement because you don't see any negative numbers. So on the unrestricted side, you're seeing an improvement of about $23 million. To the restricted side, about 19.3. Altogether, it's about 42.5. So this represents an improvement of about 5.6% combined. Okay, so the next one. So here we go into a little bit of detail on some of these changes. We'll go over the unrestricted revenue first. We did see a decrease from what we were projecting, an overall decrease of about 1.1 million. And this is primarily due to some changes in our local revenue, some decreases in our some of the fees that we collect, our interest. We saw a decrease there. We saw a decrease in some of our investment valuations. And then we did see a small increase in some of our LCFF. But overall, the net of all of these changes resulted in a decrease of $1.1 million. On the restricted side, we did see some decreases. And I want to pause and explain this here. This does not mean that we lost money or we have to send back money. What happens on the restricted side is that we have to earn it. If we don't spend it, we don't earn it, so we can't recognize some of this revenue. And so all that happens is that then in the coming year, that money gets carried over for spending in the next year according to the appropriate regulations. Sometimes there's time restrictions put on that spending, and sometimes, of course, there's certain categories. So I just wanted to clarify that because these are pretty large numbers. So on the federal side, we saw a decrease of $60.7 million, and these are some of the categories where we didn't spend money. And primarily, the main reason I'm going to share that in the ESSER categories that we did not spend according to budget is because of the supply chain issues that we saw. And you are seeing that in some of your reports that we're sending to you about construction projects going on with our shade structures, wrapping up some of our filtration stations, water stations at the school sites. We were just in the supply chain for a long time, and they're finally starting to get here, and we're finally starting to get our contractors in line to put those in place. So we're allowed to carry over those funds, and those construction projects will still continue. So I just wanted to make sure that, everyone was clear on that. And then, of course, there was some underspending in our title programs and our special ed. And then as far as restricted state revenue is concerned, we also did see a decrease in spending in that category. And these are all listed here. There's a few of them listed here, and there's far more in the executive summary as well. And so what'll happen again in the new year, these will be carried over, and these will be budgeted for spending in that new year. Okay, next slide. These are our expenditures, our unrestricted expenses. Overall, on the unrestricted side, we did see a decrease in spending from our estimated actuals of about 16.4 million. And the different categories are salaries and supplies, and I'll just go over those briefly for you. On the certificated side, we did see a decrease from what we budgeted of about $2.2 million, and this was due to one-time savings in some vacancies and in some of our extra duty temporary salaries, like for additional duties beyond the workday for tutoring. It's an estimate of what we think we're going to use, and it just doesn't, and at times it doesn't all, fully get utilized. And on the classified side, we also saw a decrease, but this is not due just to not using these funds. What occurred here is that as we were using our ESSER funds and projecting how much we were going to spend, especially by way of those salaries and those one-time stipends, Those are estimates, and as those were being paid out, we realized that we did have a little bit of savings, and so every time we had a savings amount in our stipends, we were able to funnel in additional appropriate stipends that were allowable. And so in this case, we funneled over about $3.1 million. So really, those classified salaries did get spent. 3.1 of that 4.5, they were just spent under a restricted resource, which is good. That means we preserved our unrestricted money. And of course, the benefits follow those salary adjustments. And then under books and supplies and services and operating, we did see a decrease of about $5 million. And the biggest chunk here is due to textbooks. We just did not get in that queue to spend on our textbooks, but that is in queue for these next coming years. And so that money will be preserved and carried over because that is still a planned expenditure into the next year. And we also saw some one-time savings in our site departments and supplies, and then that was offset by some increases in contracts. And then capital outlay, we had a small net decrease of about $51,000 in our transportation and operations. And then our contributions did see a decrease of about $10.5 million. And this is primarily in special ed, about 9.9 there, and due to some underspending in our NPSs and NPAs. And then our transfers out did also, that increased by $2.6 million. And I want to explain what happened here. 1.1 was due to transferring over to support our charters, but not because, they've been working really hard to stay within budget, but the penalties that were imposed on the district for the lost instructional days and minutes because of the strike, $900,000 of that is attributed to the charters. And so that wasn't something that they were planning for in their budget. And so the district transferred over money to help them cover that cost. Next slide is our restricted expenditures. So here, big dollar amounts also. We saw a decrease from what we were budgeting of about $96.3 million. And again, this is due to us not being able to implement some of these programs, and some of these will be carried over into the next year. You'll see in the certificated salaries, it was 9.2. It was in our title programs, our ELOG and special ed, classified not as high at about 2.5 million. And then, of course, benefits follow. And the books and supplies was about 44 million, and that was primarily in our ESSER funds, and for the same reason. We were just having some supply chain issues. And then on the services and other operating expenses, we did see, again, a big amount, 34.5 million, and in the majority of that, 23 million is in our ESSER and IPI. Those are our COVID relief funds that'll be carried over. Capital outlay, a little less, $6.1 million. And then here's the use of one-time funds that will be carried over into our 22-23 budget. And as you'll see, a big chunk of this are the COVID relief dollars. And we are tracking these very closely because we know these have expiration dates and we want to be sure that we spend those. We know the majority of them are going to expire in the year 24. So, and there are plans for those. As you know, the board adopted the ESSER 3 plan for that. And the rest of them are, various programs that are listed here for a total of about $118 million. And so those will be carried over. And then our next slide is, again, just resharing the ending balances, how we ended the year in 21-22, is that pink shaded bar there, because that's going to set our beginning balance for the next year. And so the numbers are for unrestricted, 65 million, restricted 44, and combined 109. However, this is before we take our 2% required for economic uncertainties, before we take out our restricted programs for 44 million. And then this is also before other assignments and our unappropriated balances is remaining. So I will go to the next slide here. And here's the impact on our multi-year projections. So we shaded in, or not shaded necessarily, our beginning balance, that's over in the first 45-day budget revise. You'll see that outlined in red. That is our new beginning fund balance. So I'm just going to summarize this, because I know it's a lot of numbers here. In that blue box, that's what's we need to pay attention to. As you'll see, we're still projecting a surplus in that third year, which is very positive, because we had been in prior years projecting deficits. So we're staying the course. However, it is being depleted over time, and that's just because our expenses, the rate of their growth outpaces the rate of the growth in our revenue. And so we'll have to keep an eye on that. And then here, you'll also see the board committed $41 million at budget adoption. You'll see that under the 45 budget revise, and along with the other assignments. So that will remain. And then we get to our summary. So in summary, we did have some one-time savings that helped improve our ending fund balances. And we are projecting surpluses in all 3 years out. And now what the district is working on is revising the 22-23 budget to include all the carryovers, update the unrestricted and restricted budgets, and then we have to update, of course, our cash flows. We know we have some updated commitments from the board that we need to build in that have been shared with us. And we also know we need to build in all of the new items from the governor's budget that were shared with you at the 45-day revise. There was no action taken. It was just informational, because we still have to develop those plans to share with you for the art, music, and instructional materials block grant, the learning recovery block grant, and of course the ELOP program. And so we are very busy working behind the scenes to try to put all that together for you and start to share that with you incrementally. So I know a lot of information there, but again, basically, this is not a budget presentation. It's simply a presentation of how we ended the year in 21-22. Okay, so, and that pretty much concludes that presentation. I'll turn it over for questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. We have two speakers, Taylor Kayada and Terrence Gladney.
Okay. Mr. Kayada, you have 2 minutes. Starting, of course, when you get to the podium.
Otherwise, I got to walk really fast. So once again, I just want to say I really appreciate Ms. Ramos's work. So this is not a criticism. I really hope you're all paying attention to this. I see you were today, but not just now, but throughout your entire terms. Because if we can't trust our budget in the year we're going to spend that money, we can't do any of the things we want to do. We can't set any of our priorities. So with that said, I just have a couple takeaways here that I really wanted to call attention to. So our school district thought for our general fund that we were going to be losing about $60 million. Turns out we only lost about $16 million, and we know in the future that's not as bad as it looks. Just to show, that's a $42 million variance. And there's a giant caveat there, which is that it would have been actually a lot better had we not had that penalty for the loss of instructional days. I also would take one criticism to Ms. Ramos. The way she presented this was it wasn't the strike that caused the loss of that money that we had to factor in. It was the fact that this administration and this board didn't prioritize making sure that those days would get made up for. Yes, of course, the strike caused that, but we could have fixed that and we didn't. It's sad. A side note for anyone who's on the policy side, I don't understand why that money is going to the state. That should be returned to the community because we all suffered from that. And instead, now it's just going to go to Gavin Newsom's budget. That's a side note. Another thing, we show a variance of almost $10 million that we didn't spend in special ed that we thought we were going to spend. Two things that bothers me about is why didn't we spend that money? It's not that the kids didn't need the services. Were they not given services? I've said before, yes, they weren't given services. How much of that are we going to lose in the future because these kids didn't get their services and they're going to sue us and they're going to come here into closed session and there's going to be settlements? All this has long-term impacts beyond just the fact that these kids didn't get the education they needed. On a final note, with my 2 seconds, before you all said that you were going to talk about the reserve for economic uncertainty that was mentioned at the last minute, where's that conversation? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kayada. Mr. Gladney, you also have 2 minutes. Of course, once you reach, take your time, man, take your time.
I need to stretch my legs anyway. Thank you, Taylor, for highlighting some of the same issues that I have as far as the discrepancies or the deltas in what we project and what we actually spend. I would ask on behalf of myself and other members of the community that each budget presentation show basically the trends. You know, we can look at the year and what it is, but we need to see the trends of what we have done in the past to see, are we improving? Is the delta this year between budgeted and actuals the same? Is it shrinking? Are we getting better at budgeting, or are we continuing the same mistakes that we've done that have led to so many discussions about cuts that don't affect most people here? They affect our kids, they affect our parents, and wondering, are they going to have services? We talk about adult education and will we supplement it, but those are the adults that this district has failed to serve when they were children. So it really isn't supplemental, it's us trying to hopefully make things right and again acknowledge our mistakes. I was in a space recently with a bunch of people that represent this office or this building, this glass palace that is so far away from our kids, that's full of adults. It probably is the cleanest, most tidiest, most well-kept building in our district, but again, does not serve kids. And the conversation was about how complex the budget is. If I look back to the attendance and the ELSB presentation, if I see that a school is celebrating or acknowledging that 75% of their students say that they have a positive climate, I'm looking at 25% say that they don't, and then I don't have to do that much work to crosswalk it with our chronic absenteeism. So this can be as complex as we want. We can say a lot of acronyms and again, alphabet soup, but if a parent can see where their student is representing these numbers, if those restricted funds, we can say they're so complex and they can only be spent on certain things. Where's the list of the certain things that show where their children can exist in that money? Where's the list that shows, this can support sports, this can support athletics, extracurriculars, make it presentable and approachable, and we probably won't have that many empty seats in this building. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gladdy. So we're going to open this up to board discussion. Member Villa.
I agree, this obviously budget, that's not what my profession is, that is yours. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that. I also want to note that in this budget and how our numbers work, and I know, Member Borowski, I believe has said this before, some of these things are out of our control. So we really have to kind of keep that into perspective when we're looking at these numbers. Yes, we do have these changes in our budgets, but a lot of these things, is that correct, Rose, that these things are out of our control? The supply, there's different things and things that we cannot spend money on due to certain restrictions. So it's important that our community understands that these numbers right now, they were fluid. I mean, everything is moving. These are big changes that we've had in the past. But also, I'll go from a different perspective. Are these numbers also reflecting the higher enrollment?
No. These numbers also reflect, as you may recall, these are for 21, 22.
Okay.
And for the last 2 years, we've seen some significant enrollment declines.
Okay. So we do, it is, again, great news that we do have a surplus. Things are still positive. This board is committed to doing the work for our students, for our school sites, as we're seeing across our district. Our ESSER funds right now have been put to work this summer. I'm really, those kind of expenses are where we're putting our money for our students in our community. The framework that we're building, I know that we see some decreases in funds, but there are, so many things that this money is doing good work for our community and our school sites. And obviously, as Member Rhodes had said as well, we do see our deficits, but we do see the good work that's being done. So I know that was kind of all over the place, but I hope I appreciate the work that's being done. And I know, like I said, there are things that are out of our control, but these dollars are being put to good use. And this board has worked to ensure that we're working with our teams to get that money back to our school sites and to our students.
Okay. Going once, going twice. Okay. So for me, when we bring back our plans for some of the restricted funds, and we have to make plans for, can we see also the per pupil spending for those. Not just a big number, but can we break it down for our community members so you can see the per pupil costs on each of those things? So if we're, for instance, you're doing maybe like the busing or the electrification, what does that money go towards when it comes to like students? So in business world, you say per like supply, right? And so we want to see that per pupil, because I think that what happens, families and our community members can say, there's $1 million spent here, there's 37,000 students, this will impact your students like this amount, 500 something per student. Does that make sense? So having something like that for our community, I believe that would be helpful.
Sure.
A little bit more work, but helpful as we kind of bring this in. Thank you once again. This was an informational, nope, it is an action item. I apologize. It was an action item. And so do we have a motion to approve? So move, second. All right, student preferential. Can we get a roll call?
Yes, Member Villa.
Aye.
Member Morowski.
Aye.
Member Rhodes.
Aye.
Member Phillips. Member Wu.
Perfection. Thank you. Motion passes. Now we're going to move on to 9.2, to approve the submission of the credential waiver application to the California Commission on Teaching Credentialing. Dr. McCarn and others. Hello.
Good evening. I'm Sabrina Jaquez, Credential Auditor. I'm here for the approval for the submission of a credential waiver application to the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. So Education Code 44253.3 allows school districts to waive a portion of the requirement for a certificated teacher in order to allow time for program completion. The California Commission on Teacher Credentialing requires that every waiver request go through a public notice process at the local level. It must be board approved in a public meeting prior to the submission of the employee agency to the CTC. This slide demonstrates the comparison of our waiver requests for our district over the previous 5 years to now. And this evening, the waiver being requested for the following ROTC teacher, and as they complete their clear credential requirements, which will include specially designed academic instruction delivered in English to English learners authorization. It is Lance Bautista, designated subjects and special subjects in ROTC at Hiram Johnson High School. Specially designed academic instruction delivered in English to English learners is the area being requested in the waiver this evening. This waiver will enable the teacher the opportunity to complete the requirements set forth by the CTC and to remain in their position to continue to work with their students. Staff recommends approving this waiver request.
Thank you very much. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do have Terrence Gladney signed up for this one.
Okay, Mr. Gladney. You have 2 minutes, Mr. Gladney.
Hopefully I won't use them all. I'm getting tired. I applaud that, through the credentialing office and through whatever legislation or policy is in place, that certain populations can have some grace afforded them to make sure that they have people in place that can meet them where they are. And I'm happy for English learners that they have that in place. I don't know if it is already in place, but if it's not, I would ask this board, this district, our state, whoever has the ability to push forward. Again, we have historical outcomes or lack of historically successful outcomes for other populations. And I'm asking again, where are they uplifted in motions such as this? Why don't we incentivize teachers that can engage and properly address the needs of African American, Latinx, LGBTQ, and other student populations that have been historically underserved? I think that should be our priority, our focus, because if we're not doing that, then we can't say we're trying to create equitable outcomes, because we keep seeing the same outcomes. So we're focused on improvement, and we're acknowledging that we're broken, we can't keep, trying to put Neosporin and little Band-Aids on it. We really have to do some surgery. So that's up to you guys. You guys are engaged in policy, and you guys, shake hands and rub elbows. I see everybody's social media. I follow you guys in all the spaces. So, let's have those conversations and let's have them actually mean something and affect some better outcomes.
Thank you, Mr. Gladney. Open up to my colleagues. Seeing none, this is an action item, so we need a motion. Motion by Member Wu, seconded by two people, Member Murowski. And can we get a student preferential? I apologize. Superintendent.
Member Villa?
Aye.
Member Morowski?
Aye.
Member Rhodes?
Aye.
Member Phillips? Member Wu?
Thank you so much. Now we are moving on to item 9.7. Approve of AB. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Vice President Rhodes, Superintendent, trustees. Yes, I do not look like Sean Hadnot. Yes, yes, I'm much more attractive. I wish Sean was here to hear that. So, all right, levity is good. I'm here to present the AB 1200 disclosure and approval of the Teamsters tentative agreement. As you can see, one of the key proponents is the article of compensation, the 4% ongoing increase for the 21-22 school year, and 2 individual one-time stipends for the fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22 years, along with a comprehensive classification and compensation study. The fiscal impact, as you will see, is a total of $1.3 million across the 3 years, with a one-time of $681,000 and an ongoing of $622,000 in the ongoing years, both out of the restricted and unrestricted general fund. Since this is one of 3, any questions?
First, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
Seeing that we have no public comment, I'll open up to my colleagues. None? All right. So do we have a motion to approve? So moved. Second by Villa. You guys are on it today. You guys are doing it at the same time, but we'll go Villa. Student preferential. Superintendent.
Member Villa?
Aye.
Member Morowski?
Aye.
Member Rhodes?
Aye.
Member Phillips? Member Wu?
All right. Thank you very much. Motion approved. Now we're going to 9.8, approve AB 1200 disclosure and approve of successor negotiations. We have the handsome one again.
All right. So this one is now for our Teamsters classified supervisors tentative agreement. Once again, the key proponents, the 4% ongoing for the 21-22 school year, 2 individual one-time stipends for the fiscal year 21, fiscal year 22, an increase to their longevity to increase annual stipend to $1,030 from $792. Also a comprehensive classification and compensation study. Article 7, as you will see, is that they are now going to be receiving 100% of the Kaiser active rate across the board, along with the 100% of the dental and vision benefits. One other item is, as you can see, 9.6 has to do with tools that their allowance is going to go up to $200 from $120. As you will see, the fiscal impact is $663,000 across the 3 years, with a one-time cost of $217 and the ongoing cost of $446 over the remaining 2 that will be funded out of restricted and unrestricted general fund.
Okay. Thank you very much again. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
Colleagues? So move. Student preferential, second, ordered by Wu. Student preferential. Superintendent?
Member Villa?
Aye.
Member Morowski?
Aye.
Member Rhodes?
Aye.
Member Phillips? Member Wu?
Motion passes. And I believe we have one more for you.
Yes.
This is 9.9, approval of AB 1200, disclosure and approval of increased employer contribution for non-represented employees.
Yes. The proposal is to provide 100% of the dental and vision for unrepresented, all non-represented employees and their dependents. Fiscal impact would be an ongoing cost of $325,000 across the 3 years, funded with unrestricted general fund.
Do we have any public comment on the item?
We do not.
Colleagues? No? I would like to say that this last one right here, this is a very equitable thing to do, and it's needed, and this is going to help out a lot of our employees who are unrepresented and their family members. So there's the work of the board, the work of our district, but it shows idea of equity across all of our labor partners, and that we do care, even for the unrepresented. So thank you once again for that time, and we'll take, we had a second, we had a first, second, and third, it's all that. And we'll do student preferential. Superintendent.
Member Villa?
Aye.
Member Morowski?
Aye.
Member Rhodes?
Aye.
Member Phillips? Member Wu? And Acting President Rose, if I can just reiterate your appreciation really to the Board of Education. For several years now, we have been seeking to bring the parity that with your action we've just achieved now, and that is that we can demonstrate to every one of our employees that from the perspective of what we contribute toward healthcare, we want to treat everyone equally because we value everyone equally. And the idea that everyone has access to the same general health care coverage, I think sends that strong signal to every one of our employees. So I just want to really say thank you to the board for your commitment to bring this parity. It's taken several years, as you know, and also with the exception of some reopeners among some of our labor partners, I also just want to make sure that the board and our community also understands that our contracts are now closed. We're not operating on any expired contracts, and that also is something that I think we ought to feel good about as well.
100%, I concur. Now, thank you for your time, sir, and your presentation.
Have a good evening.
Now we're going to bump back up to 9.3, first reading of revised board policy 5141.21.
Good evening, members of the board. Superintendent Aguilar, Victoria Flores, serving as your Executive Director of Student Support and Health Services, here to provide this first reading of Board Policy 5141.21, administering medication and monitoring health conditions. So this was last revised around December 2019, and these updates are consistent with the new California School Board Association language, specifically two provisions. Provision of another emergency medication called naloxone hydrochloride. Oftentimes you might know it the brand name Narcan. And then requirements around student medicinal cannabis use. This is really grounded in ensuring that our school communities have ready access to emergency medications or equipment. This is similar to having the AED machines that you might see out there in the lobby or at your schools, EpiPens at schools in the case of a severe allergic reaction, stop the bleed kits in the case of some kind of emergency, and so just adding one more, as well as ensuring our students have may access medications during the school day as indicated by their medical provider, similar to the wide range of medications currently provided to students throughout the school day. We have varied medical conditions, and our students get lots of care. So specifically about the naloxone program, the board policy says that we will make available naloxone hydrochloride to provide emergency medical aid to any person suffering from or reasonably believed to be suffering from an opioid overdose. The California Department of Healthcare has been a good friend to us, and they have a naloxone distribution project that provides free naloxone to schools in order to prevent opioid overdose-related deaths. Naloxone works by blocking that opioid receptor sites, reversing that toxic effects of the overdose. If you're familiar with this, it's almost looks magical what happens. It has a few known adverse effects and no potential for abuse. Narcan is the branded name that California Department of Healthcare Services is providing. It's a nasal spray, through the program and may be administered by a layperson. There's a picture of it on the side. If you take a nasal, an allergy nasal spray or anything like that, it's very similar. And why this is so important to us here, particularly in Sacramento County. In 2021, Sacramento County experienced 174 opioid deaths. These are deaths that were preventable had someone had Narcan available, and 520 opioid-related ER visits. We know that as individuals cope with the multiple traumas, of the pandemic, we have seen substance abuse in general increase. And opioid overdose does not discriminate. It can impact family, friends, neighbors, coworkers, colleagues, the students that we serve. And so with the passing of this board policy, SCUSD will be distributing naloxone or Narcan to every school site with training available to all of our staff. And then on the other side of the revision, there's some language around the guidance for student use of medicinal cannabis. So per Health and Safety Code, a parent or a guardian may come to the school site and administer medicinal cannabis, excluding a smokable or vapable form, to a student at a school site during the day. This decision, there's some structures around this though. This decision to allow administration must include a written recommendation from a medical provider, be made by a 504 or an IEP team in consultation with SUSD Health Services Department. And again, this is really about ensuring that us as a district, that we are able to support a student's medical treatment plan so that they may really access their education. And I believe that is it for me.
Thank you so much for this presentation. Do we have any public comment on the item?
We do not.
Opening up to my colleagues. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Just a quick question on our school sites, for administering, EpiPens, all of these different equipment that we have at school sites. Obviously last year was, it's been a hard couple of years. How are we getting our school sites now up to speed and making sure that every school site has these services offered to them, and also we're making sure that our staff are trained and up to date with those kind of procedures?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, pre-pandemic, that was something that health services, our school nurses really helped to do at all of their school sites, providing that training. It's part of our annual notices as well. We're fortunate enough right now to have health aides in all of our school sites as well, so they've really helped us reinforce making sure that our AED machines are checked regularly, batteries are good. Worst thing you could do is need it and it's not functional, right? Making sure that our EpiPens are, current and not expired, pulling those expired ones and restocking. And so we have Narcan, ready to go and stocked. And so this is just part of our every school year practice. But you're right, there was some making sure that we were ready because things had been sitting for, a year plus.
And one more quick question. So is this something that we do annually or quarterly?
Pretty much annually. So our EpiPens, have an expiration date that we follow. And so about annually, we pull those. Same with like any other medication that families may leave behind. We try to get it back to them, but we make sure that we dispose of those properly. So this is just one of those sort of quiet things that happens in the background, making sure that we are, keeping everyone on our campus. I will say not just students, but staff and volunteers and contractors safe and have this accessible emergency, equipment or medication.
Okay, one last question, I apologize. Is everybody on the school site trained to the location and able to administer? It's not
Yes.
just an office, okay.
Correct, yeah, so that's something that we'll do at staff meetings. We reiterate with oftentimes like campus safety teams, office teams, administrators. I'm looking for those volunteers, or if a classroom has a student with a significant health need, maybe a significant allergy, we make sure everyone in there is trained, sometimes even students.
Next, we'll have Board Member Wu, then Board Member Phillips.
Thank you. Does the County of Sacramento, have they differentiated between age of the 174 opioid deaths?
I'd have to look into that and see if they disaggregated that. I could get back with you on that.
Yes, okay.
Just asking regarding medicinal cannabis. This is a child who needs medicinal cannabis administered at school. Parent or guardian comes to school and administers that.
Yeah, this provision would allow for that. So before updating this board policy, there wasn't even an allowance for that. And so this would now allow, should a parent or a guardian need to, hopefully we can time these things where a student might be able to take that, but we do have students who need medication at lunchtime, most frequently diabetes.
Right.
And this would allow them that option.
Okay. I'm a little concerned about it, but I understand if it's a doctor approves it, but is it a doctor or is it a real doctor? That's my concern, because you can get a medicinal card for cannabis from a lot of people who, profess to be doctors. So, are we doing a kind of a critical triple check on it?
Yes, so that's part of that doctor recommendation. Our nurses regularly talk to doctors' offices, checking medical orders and making sure that we're understanding what they note down. And so in this case, that would be similar. There is a specific medication that we're seeing. It's an anti-seizure medication that is CBD-based that has been really successful for some, and we just want to make sure we're removing any barrier, possible, especially if it really does contribute to the health and well-being of our student. So far, we haven't really had this come up, but we know that that's becoming more common treatment.
Okay, and then about the Narcan, naloxone, whatever it's called, the Narcan, just to be clear for folks who are out there, if you're accidentally administered Narcan and you're not having an opioid crisis, that's not going to hurt you at all, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Same with an EpiPen, right? There's no adverse effect, and we'll do our best to, make sure that those are signs and symptoms that are consistent. That's part of that training, but you're correct, it cannot do any harm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Phillips. This was a first reading, and so I believe it will be coming back to our board for approval later on. Thank you for your time. We're going to move on to 9.4, approve board policy 4040, employee use of technology.
Good evening, members of the board and Superintendent Aguilar. Tonight, I'm bringing to you 3 board policy updates, and this is the second reading on all these, so it's an action item. The first board policy is 4040, the employee use of technology. And this was last updated in 2002, so it's a very old policy. It doesn't even mention internet or any of those kind of things. It just talks about voicemail and electronic networks and email, and that's about it. So this really needs to get updated. The last time the school board, California School Boards Association updated this was in 2015. And there's been some changes since then, so we've added those changes in. It also adds updates to technology as a resource to support student learning and instructional programs, and it also adds how technology can enhance staff performance. And it also updates what constitutes district technology. So it's not, so we've added, since this change from CSBA in 2015, we've taken out pagers and some of those old MP3 players, and we have updated the Chromebooks and talked about wireless and smart devices. So it also talks about outside vendors and community members and partners that access our technology just to protect for cybersecurity reasons. Any questions on this update?
First, before we go to Q&A, do we have any public comment on the item?
We do not.
Okay, then we're going to go to Board Member Phillips.
Are there any policies that, I know this talks about Wi-Fi and smart devices, but in our classrooms, there have been a lot of mention that, you know, a teacher cannot go to a certain site to play a certain video. So I know we block them through our firewall, but I mean, has there been any contact with like our educators about the problems they're having? So I know this says, you know, we're going to keep our system safe, but you know, there are a lot of needs for people to be able to do things in the classroom. So is there a policy specific to what types of things are blocked?
Actually, it's a little different policy, but it's if there's anything that it's covered, it is covered under this as they have to watch, the staff have to watch what they're presenting to the students, obviously. And so if there's any question about a filter blocking it, they would just request to unblock. So one of the problems we're having right now is that some of the teachers are on the student filter and they're getting blocked at a higher rate. So the staff is pretty much open. We did change filters last year, and it's a little bit more restrictive. So we're opening up these sites as we get requests. So that's the problem we're seeing. We're seeing that some of the teachers are still on the student filter and not on the staff filter.
Okay, so this is an action item. So we're going to have a motion. So move. Second. Woo. Student preferential. Aye.
Member Villa?
Aye.
Member Morowski?
Aye.
Member Rhodes?
Aye.
Member Phillips?
Aye.
Member Wu?
Motion passes. Now we're going to go to 9.5, approval of board policy. I think that's right. Yeah, there we go. It's still you, sir. I was like, he's here again. Okay, you have one more after this, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure I had it right. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so this one's a release of directory information, and the reason why I'm presenting this one tonight is because it falls under student information systems, what's in there, and then, so that's why I'm presenting this one tonight. This one was last revised in 2005, and this, when we talk about directory information, we're talking about the student's address, phone number. It can also include things that you would see in a football program, basketball program, height, weight, those kind of things. So it's all of that is considered directory information. And so parents do not want that to be out there. They can withdraw that permission, and there's a form to do that. So it's there's a lot of confidentiality, obviously, around student data. So this just protects what we release. So, and it also updates the policy and cross-references for this. Now, who has access to this? Well, representatives of schools and colleges, the military has access, offices of public officials for awards, the news media, nonprofit. So we get these requests. So there's general information that we can release, and everything else outside of what the admin regulation would state is restricted. So, so like I mentioned, so parents and guardians can limit what's released, and they can also extend that release if they put a request in. So.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
Colleagues? See, okay, Member Wu?
Is this an opt-in or opt-out for the parents?
This is opt-out. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a motion to move forward? Motion, so moved by Member Morowski, seconded by Member Wu. Did you have any? Student preferential, I apologize.
Member Villa?
Aye.
Member Morowski?
Aye.
Member Rhodes?
Aye.
Member Phillips?
Aye.
Member Wu?
Okay, moving on to 9.6, Board Policy 6163.4, Student Use of Technology. Mr. Lyons.
Okay, the student use of technology, this one was last updated in 2018. And what I'm trying to do is just make sure that we're synced up with the staff use, because this current policy also mentions MP3 players in its current state, talks about pagers, PDAs. So we deleted those, added Chromebooks, and just tweaked it to match the staff policy here. So just like the staff policy, the CSBA last updated this in 2015. Oops, I guess I should be flipping these slides here. And also updates the policy and cross-references. So,
Thank you, sir. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, we do not.
Colleagues? Oh, well, we have Member Wu. No, that's from last time? All right. So moved. Second. Villa and Morowski. Student preferential?
Member Villa?
Aye.
Member Morowski?
Aye.
Member Rhodes?
Aye.
Member Phillips?
Aye.
Member Wu?
Thank you so much, sir. Now moving to 10.1, SCTA, they did theirs earlier, by Brother Hassan. Do we have SCIU here? Do we have TCS? Okay, Teamsters? UPE? Okay, we're going to go to item 10.2, District Advisory Committees. The Community Advisory Committee, do we have anyone? Okay. District English Language Advisory Committee? Okay. Our LCAP Committee? Okay. Student Advisory Committee? Okay, nothing to update. African American Advisory Board? All right, well, this leads us to 10.3, Superintendent's Report.
Thank you, Acting President Rhodes. I want to first say good evening to everyone. I know that we didn't have an open session last week, and we just want to thank everyone for your patience in having us consolidate two agendas into one board meeting this evening, and we're doing our best to move right through this as quickly as we can, but of course, with a lot of thoughtfulness. I want to just say that as we enter the second and third week of school for this academic year, of course, we are still excited. I was at Pacific Elementary today, still seeing a lot of smiles among our students and families and staff, of course, for the beginning of this academic school year. There's so much energy among our students and our families and our staff, of course. I do know that while I wasn't able to be there on the first day of school at Alder Creek, they were greeted by our new district mascot, Crispin, who was born out of a pre-COVID idea and designed by one of our staff members, Ms. Martine Kruger, who's a specialist in our risk management department, who felt that we needed to have a friendly face to welcome students and families. And I know that Crispin has been very busy and active, and expect to see Crispin with our families on Saturday, probably at Alder Creek as well. But as you know, board members and community, our return to school occurred during a record-breaking heat wave, and at Pacific, I did everything I could to thank as many of our staff, our cafeteria and nutrition services employees who worked under very intense conditions in our cafeterias where our ovens are on, and we had a heat wave, of course, and did everything that we could. I want to, of course, just appreciate and thank all of our staff who did their best during last week as we did everything we could to keep our students safe and cool. Just really quickly, we have approximately 6,000 air conditioning units throughout our district, and unfortunately, a few of them did experience some mechanical problems. But again, our staff, our facilities team worked tirelessly to address the cooling needs of our classrooms during this emergency, and I want to commend them for their dedication and effort. They secured both parts and installed them. I asked our team to save just, who knows, for historical reasons, hopefully we don't experience this again in a long time. There were parts that literally melted from units at CK McClatchy, the chiller unit, because it's an older facility. I've not yet seen, I've seen pictures of it, but it literally just melted. And I know that it was very inconvenient for our students and staff for the time period that it took for us to replace that part. I mentioned our nutrition services team also had to work through many, many challenges during the heat wave, and temperatures inside the kitchens, of course, could become quickly unbearable. Also, our drivers in transportation who were outdoors during these hotter days. As you can imagine, keeping a bus cool can be very tough because you're opening and you're closing doors, and there's windows throughout the entire unit, of course, and so we did everything that we could to make sure that our students stayed safe as well. There are so many, many staff members, board members that I can continue to mention who just really worked tirelessly all of last week, and we can't thank them enough, and certainly appreciate all that they do. I want to very quickly just mention, I think Member Villa made reference to this, on the topic of facilities. I usually take my children to school and drive through that 65th corridor, and you can see a lot of improvement that has taken place throughout our schools. When I go home, I usually take power in and am able to see all of the work that's happening at Alger Creek as well. I did visit the construction site at Hiram Johnson recently, and again, I see it every single day, and I've asked our communications team to really do everything that they could to send messages to our community through social media. Let's not wait until the projects are done. Let's instead celebrate milestones when footings are installed, when cement is laid. Those are all things that I think we should celebrate. I will always remember the board meeting several years ago when we had the student body president of Hiram Johnson come to this podium here and remind us of our core value statement that talked about equity, meaning that we had to level the playing field, and said we literally are asking you to level the football playing field, and that's in fact what our board committed to doing, and I can't wait to see our students and our community in Hiram Johnson enjoy that facility. But I could also speak about other schools. Burbank, I've yet to see it, but I'm looking forward to visiting the Burbank pool and locker, which has been literally demolished and should have been demolished many, many years ago. Again, there's just so many reasons from a facilities perspective that the board and our community should be proud for this board's commitment to actualizing an equity vision in the world of facilities, which we don't see very often. Many of you were at Floyd Farms as well. I want to just, again, thank you and thank everybody at who contributed to making that space a reality for our students and for this entire region. It was during the heat wave, but we managed to celebrate and bring a lot of smiles to many people in that community. Summer meals as well. Just so much that has been happening, and you heard it in our opening of schools presentation, and I'm looking forward to posting that on our website and seeing many people review that and celebrate that with us. Lastly, Acting President Rhodes, I just want to take time to invite everyone to our SAC Goes Back Community Fair at Alger Creek this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. This is our second community fair, and we intend to continue with those this year. They provide free entertainment to our students, while our parents can be connected to valuable resources from our district and community partners, free meals, Family Meal Sacramento, which is prepared by local restaurants. I know something that you care deeply about, Acting President Rhodes, free bicycle repairs, and so do I, free haircuts, free school supplies, free books, just so many resources that we want to make available to our community and celebrate with them. We will also be offering COVID vaccines, entertainment, dance lessons, motivational speakers, improv, gardening. Again, this is just part of our effort to dramatically improve student attendance and community engagement as well. And we hope to see many, many people in space with us as a community on Saturday at Alger Creek. I know Member Villa will be there, who represents that area, so I look forward to seeing many of our community members there. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. So we'll just go into, we'll do information sharing. We'll do student board member report first, and then we'll go into information sharing by the board.
I want to take a moment and bring up that 9/11 was on a Sunday. It was not on a school day, so I want to take a moment of silence for all the people who have lost their lives and all those heroic people who have unfortunately passed away. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Then we're going to go board sharing. I believe I see Board Member Phillips and then Board Member Villa.
It was a hot August. I had the pleasure of participating in the Health Education Council's SAC Youth Works cohort graduation. It's a program for underserved individuals, I think between, 18 and 19. It's on here somewhere. But the stories that I heard from these young people who went through a crash course in, I think, 10 days to learn construction skills, safety, how to build scaffolds. They all got their white hats and they got their vests. But the stories that I got from these young people was were stories of barriers that they overcame. There was one young man, I don't remember his name, but he was very surprised to show up at a program like this where he could learn. He talked about not learning anything in school. And he just showed up one day and started taking the classes with them. I worked with Mr. Morris and Lavanya Deloach, and it's an awesome program. I don't know if we're working with them, but I'd like to look into maybe connecting with them a little bit more. But I mean, they'll help with anything, and this is a paid program. When you graduate, you get a check, and then you have people who are hiring from the construction trades who are there. So they had a graduation, and then they had a job fair at the same place. And it was awesome. So I want us to consider thinking about that. Also, I did a back to school at Father Keith B. Kinney with our new principal, Mrs. Alexander. We had a really good turnout. We had free backpacks. We had snow cones. It was really good to see my community out visiting a school. So it's been cool. But I want us to really try to work with this. I know we have programs, but why not have one more?
Thank you, Member Phillips. Member Villa.
Just a few short items. Again, as Superintendent had mentioned, going around to the first day of school, seeing all of the site construction has been just amazing to see. Elder Creek, Superintendent and I went to a few schools and visited them together on the first day, but just every principal, office staff, students. I got to go into a lot of classrooms and talk to a lot of teachers. Specifically at New Joseph, we have Teacher of the Year. He was very excited to show us his video, and he told us about how he had won with his family and watching it on TV. So that was exciting, great first day. I'm really excited for all the work that's happening in our schools. Again, the kids are really excited. Obviously, Elder Creek, thank you for mentioning that. I'm very excited. We have 19 artists that will be painting murals throughout the school. It's going to completely transform that corridor of Power Inn by Elder Creek. So many people drive past that, bike past that. There's also a great farmer's market across the street, which the community, if you ever drive down that on the street on the weekends, it's packed. So I'm really excited that we get to actually have art by local artists at that school site. And I'm sure Trustee Rhodes will mention this as well, but tomorrow's 916 Day, and there's some great events happening in the city. So many tree plantings, so if you go online, look that up. It's a great day in our city, and I'm excited what we're going to be able to do this weekend.
100%. Seeing no other of my colleagues, obviously, 916 Day. We're kicking 916 Day off. The city's kicking 916 Day off, actually, at New Tech at Argonaut Park. We're doing a tree planting tomorrow at 7 a.m. 7 a.m. If you guys want to get up and come plant some trees over at New Tech, we'll be there at 7 a.m. planting trees with students, families, staff. We'll be all out there to kick off 916 Day in a big way. Also, tomorrow night, we have Burbank versus Grant High School at Burbank, Southside Pride. And I'm not going to jinx anybody, so I'm not going to say anything about winning or losing, but I know where my heart's at, and I hope that you guys send love and all of the encouragement to our Burbank football team and the families that are out tomorrow. I hope to see you guys out there. It's going to be packed, and it's going to be a good time. And then also on Sunday, we have Franklin Boulevard Back to the Boulevard Black Party community event. It's going to have a lot of local electeds out. We're going to be having a parade up and down the boulevard, but then also connecting with our community members. And I invite my colleagues to also come out so that we can connect with our families and friends in celebration. This is also in celebration of Mexican independence. And so we'll have all the lowriders, great food, great community, and it's always a good event to be at. And other than that, seeing that we have no more members, we're going to move on to our consent agenda and approving all items of the consent agenda.
Yes, on all open session items.
Okay. And then motion, second. Superintendent.
Yes, Member Villa.
Aye.
Member Morowski.
Aye.
Member Rhodes.
Aye.
Member Phillips.
Aye.
Member Wu.
Okay, and then business and financial information reports. Anybody come in for that? Rose? No, we're good? We're good? Okay, and future board meetings, item 13, October 6th at 4:30 p.m. Is closed session, 6:30 open session here at the Cerner Center, and October 13th, 4:30 p.m. closed session, 6:30 p.m. open session, and we will move to adjourn. So moved. That's all, folks.
Nice job, Mr. Chase.
9:56. 9:56, guys.